Chapter 1857. The palace maid walked unsteadily with the tray in her hands. Although there wasn't much of an expression on her face, Lotus Sun and Zhang Ziqin were keenly aware that something was wrong. They looked at each other and confirmed the look in their eyes again, thinking that this palace maid might be on their side. However, not everyone had a particularly obvious habit, and not everyone was like Zhang Zipei, whose body was made of iron wire. So it was hard to tell who was living in this palace maid's body with the naked eye. "Excuse me, are you, little friend Gu Xuanji?" Zhang Ziqin asked without hesitation at that moment. His intuition told him that it was probably a man in this palace maid's body. Because it was very obvious that her walking posture wasn't right, and she seemed to be troubled by the sudden weight on her chest. And there were only a few men among them. If it was Li Xian, Zhang Ziqin could immediately tell that monk Jin Dang had experienced being a woman in countless reincarnations, so it wouldn't feel out of place even if he entered a woman's body. That left Qin Zong, Xiang Yi, Gu Xuanji and Wang Zhen. Of course, Zhang Ziqin wasn't too familiar with any of them, so he could only rely on his intuition to guess blindly. As soon as he said this, the palace maid instantly looked up with an expression that looked like she was about to cry. "I'm Wang Zhen. Not Gu Xuanji." Pfft. At that moment, Zhang Ziqin and Lotus Sun couldn't help bursting into laughter. Wang Zhen's visibly aggrieved and tearful voice made the two of them burst out laughing. To be honest, after confirming his relationship with Lu Qingyi, perhaps because of Lu Qingyi's strong performance in love, Wang Zhen would occasionally dream of suddenly becoming a woman. For a straight man of steel, this was simply tremendous torture. But Wang Zhen never thought that he would actually encounter this kind of thing one day. Not only had he transmigrated and entered the mysterious diary world, he had even become a palace maid in the imperial palace. Wang Zhen's heart was on the verge of collapse. Furthermore, this palace maid didn't seem to be in good health. Wang Zhen had been feeling nauseous ever since he had entered her body. "So it's brother Wang Zhen. I'm Zhang Ziqin, and the one sitting inside is Miss Sunday Sai. I didn't expect the eternal cultivation realm to be so big, yet the three of us were able to meet here. It must be fate." Zhang Zipei, who was playing the role of Yi Ren, couldn't help but sigh. "I have to find a way back as soon as possible. This body is too weak. I feel like vomiting at the slightest provocation. I can't stay here any longer," Wang Zhen said worriedly. "Weak? It can't be." Hearing that, Zhang Zizi frowned. These are the palace maids of the great emperor's imperial palace. Although they are called palace maids, they are actually hired by the imperial family. Every palace maid has an extraordinary background. The one you're currently possessing is the Holy Stone Cult's Holy Maiden. She was sent into the palace to gain experience, and her strength is not weak either. She is at the Dao God realm. Wang Zhen was immediately dumbfounded when he heard this. What? Dao God? He was astonished. In their God realm, a Dao God could be the head of a family. But in the Eternal Era, a Dao God was just a palace maid. However, after hearing Zhang Zizi's words, Wang Zhen suddenly felt that the forces of the Eternal Era were very complicated. All the sects actually fought to send their own people into the palace, and they even did it in the name of gaining experience. Why was it completely different from the feudal dynasties in history that he had heard of? So, she really is a holy maiden. The astonishment on Wang Zhen's face didn't diminish. No wonder I saw some scenes of people worshipping her in my memory. However, this holy maiden's memory seems to be incomplete. Her memory after entering the palace is fragmented. Something bad must have happened to her, and she might have selective amnesia. Zhang Zizi said with a frown. According to the memories provided by Yi Ren, he only knew that these men and women who were sent into the imperial palace had extraordinary backgrounds. He only remembered a few special ones, but not all of them had names that matched. For example, the saintess of the Holy Stone cult usually had a cold expression on her face, which was why Yiren had a particularly deep impression of her. It was also because she usually did not speak much and kept a low profile that Yiren's understanding of her was limited to her background. But at that moment, he heard Wang Jin mention that this holy maiden had a weak body. Zhang Zizi's expression began to turn suspicious. He took a few steps forward and grabbed Wang Jin's wrist. After holding it for a moment, the smile on his face gradually grew more arrogant. I see. What's wrong? Don't be a riddler, I'm about to die of annoyance, Senior Zhang, Wang Jin said irritably. If I'm right, it should be that you, oh no, your body is pregnant. Wang Jin. Lotus-san didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then what should we do now? If we can't go back, then, Zhang Zizi nodded his head. That's right. If we can't go back, I'm afraid little friend Wang Jin will have to personally experience the pain of childbirth for 10 months. Wang Jin, Zhang Zizi also had a sympathetic expression on his face regarding Wang Jin's misfortune. We were all sent here by the power of the mysterious text, and we haven't found a way to get out yet. Apart from the three of us, we don't know what role the others play in this world. The only way to save us is to find Ling Jinren. I'm sure he's also playing a role here. Of course, Ling Jinren doesn't like to talk, so finding him is as difficult as ascending to heaven. If we really can't go back, then, since we're already here, let's just make the best of it. Saying that, he couldn't help patting Wang Jin on the shoulder with an expression of trying hard to hold in his laughter. This kind of thing would undoubtedly be a heavy blow to anyone who experienced it. No one could have expected such a blunder. Hurry up and sort out your expression, little friend Wang Jin. Now isn't the time for you to cry, we still have to act according to the plot, otherwise we'll affect the course of history. He did his best to comfort Wang Jin. Step aside and sort out your emotions first. At the very least, don't let East Great Emperor see through it. The Emperor of the Eastern Territory will be here soon. Okay, but Senior Zhang, you have to think of a way. Wang Jin nodded. Of course. I'm here, I won't let you and Miss Sun be trapped here forever. At that moment, Zhang Zizi comforted him again. Lotus-san and Wang Jin hadn't expected Zhang Zizi to be so unexpectedly reliable at this critical moment. Then, Yangxin Palace Hall immediately quieted down. The three of them waited inside for a while before the shout of an old official came from outside the hall. The Emperor has arrived. A valiant man dressed in a vermilion bird imperial robe and wearing an emperor's jade feather crown on his head slowly strolled into Yangxin Palace Hall surrounded by attendants. Chapter 1858. Just a few hours ago, Wang Ling and East Great Emperor had had a cordial and friendly conversation. Of course, it was Wang Ying who had spoken, and Wang Ling had only asked Wang Ying to pass on the questions while he listened on the side. This directly caused East Great Emperor's back to break out in sweat during the entire questioning process. Compared with Wang Ling, Wang Ying didn't have such a good temper, nor would she spoil East Great Emperor. She had been extremely irritable from beginning to end. East Great Emperor felt a chill run down his spine when he heard every sharp question. He even suspected that he might have invited a zoo and god to possess him. You mean that you listened to someone else's instructions and set up this trap, but you actually don't know who the person is? Then why did you bring me here for a secret talk? Are you still talking about ghosts? East Great Emperor sat obediently on a praying mat in the depository of Buddhist texts and accepted Wang Ying's reprimand. I swear on my dignity as an emperor that everything I said is true. That person gave me directions in my dream, it was just an outline. I couldn't see his face clearly. Speaking up to this point, East Great Emperor felt very wronged and couldn't help sighing. I thought that after ascending to the throne, I was already invincible under Tao ancestor Wang. I didn't expect that there would always be a higher mountain in the cultivation world. Receiving directions from an almighty was something I happened to encounter by accident. How can I spy on someone with such ability to set up a trap across the ages? So I really don't know anything about his identity. Great God, you should understand, just like I don't know anything about yours. Hearing this, Wang Ying laughed. Heh, you're really a very level-headed person. Then let me ask you, is it possible that Tao Ancestor Wang is behind this? It doesn't seem like Tao Ancestor Wang's style of doing things. East Great Emperor shook his head. Tao Ancestor has always been outstanding. Every time he makes a move, it's earth-shattering, and he's eager for others to know about it. He has enough confidence in his strength, so he dares to do this. Thus, Tao Ancestor's style has always been to attack quickly, to decide victory or defeat in the shortest possible time. Although I can't rule out the possibility of a long-term plot, I think the possibility is very low. When Wang Ling heard this in secret, he couldn't refute it for a moment. Because based on the current situation, Tao Ancestor Wang seemed to have such a personality. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used the sovereign corpse shrouding diagram to find all sorts of excuses and lock up all the primordial ones he could find in a short period of time. On the surface, it looked like Tao Ancestor Wang was being unreasonable, but Wang Ling had previously judged that Tao Ancestor Wang had done this on purpose. It was highly likely that they were worried that the primordial ones would be destroyed like the Great Old Ones or the Dragon Race, so they thought of this method to continue the fire seed. Therefore, Tao Ancestor Wang must have realized something back then, which was why he made such an extreme move. He didn't even hesitate to ruin his own reputation, making those immortals trapped in the corpse-wrapping diagram hate him. You've been talking for half a day, but all you've said is useless nonsense. Let me ask you, have you seen Tao Ancestor Wang? Where is this old tortoise now? Can you see him? Wang Ying asked impatiently. To actually call Tao Ancestor Wang an old turtle, East Great Emperor was shocked and continued to wipe his sweat. Sure enough, as he had guessed, this great god who had possessed him wasn't Tao Ancestor Wang at all, otherwise, there was no way he would speak like this. We 4 emperors have all seen Tao Ancestor. How do I put it? He looks more amiable than we imagined, and is a modest gentleman. Although he's called Tao Ancestor, he's actually not as old as we imagined, and is full of benevolence. East Great Emperor said with a slightly nostalgic expression, but Tao Ancestor's whereabouts are mysterious. Unless he comes to see us, even great emperors have no way of finding him. Also, he never intervenes in the affairs of us 4 emperors. Even when we are at loggerheads, he doesn't intervene. So I don't think it was Tao Ancestor who caused the Eastern Territory crisis this time. After asking for a long time, there didn't seem to be any useful information, and Wang Ling and Wang Ying couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. But this experience wasn't completely fruitless. At the very least, it helped them better understand the structure of the cultivation world and the distribution of power in the primordial ones, which would be helpful for Wang Ling's subsequent construction of utopia for the primordial ones. The scene fell into a long silence. As East Great Emperor sweated, he suddenly asked anxiously, "Great God? Great God, are you still there?" Wang Ying, I've been asking for a long time, but you don't have any information at all. I'm going to leave. East Great Emperor, don't, Great God. You have to stay for a few more days. There's a gathering of the 4 emperors on the trade planet in the Central Territory tomorrow, and I have to write it down in my diary. If you leave now, it won't match up with the contents of the diary. That's your diary, what does it have to do with us? Wang Ying chuckled. Because I'm going to write in my diary that I'm going to reveal Supreme Light Mahamayuri on the trade planet. If you leave, won't I be unable to do it? If I can't do it, I'll affect the course of history. Then destroy it, I'm tired, don't. Great God. Hearing that Wang Ying was going to leave so decisively, East Great Emperor was so anxious that tears instantly welled up in his eyes. Just 2 more days, Great God, please stay for 2 more days at most. The gathering of the 4 emperors is very important, because it involves some of the Western Territory's compensation to our Eastern Territory. If I don't show my Dharma form to demonstrate my power, West Great Emperor won't be afraid of me at all. It was hard to believe that East Great Emperor, who was full of imperial majesty in front of outsiders, actually had this side to him in the depository of Buddhist texts. Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh at the way he humbly begged for help. But the truth was that Wang Ling was still very curious about the eternal cultivation world. Furthermore, the gathering of the four emperors and the trade planets sounded very interesting. He wondered if there were any crispy noodle snacks from the eternal cultivation world on sale on this trade planet. Thus, after about 2 or 3 minutes of silence, Wang Ying received Wang Ling's affirmative reply and passed it on his behalf. Then 2 more days at most. Once 2 days are up, I'll leave, Wang Ying said. Okay, great God. This emperor is here to thank you. Emperor. Emperor's emperor. Wang Ying chuckled. How could I? It's my younger brother's younger brother. East Great Emperor reacted quickly. Big brother. I'm counting on you. Who's your big brother? You sure know how to make connections. Wang Ying couldn't help laughing. What other plans do you have? It seems we're almost done discussing them. I still have to see Jiaoyang later. Big brother, you should know that I didn't execute her. Of course, if she wants to live, she can't use the identity of goddess Jiaoyang anymore. East Great Emperor said, so, I erased her memory. I also used the vermilion bird fire to change her appearance. After the fire is healed, she'll look completely new. And now, I'm going to see her and give her a new identity. Why did you do this for the daughter of a traitor? Wang Ying was curious. Wang Ling was also curious about this. Because she's my daughter. Chapter 1859. Since the beginning of time, Wang Ling felt that he had learned a lot after experiencing it for himself this time. He had learned from East Great Emperor that Jiaoyang was the child of East Great Emperor and an ancient being who wasn't of royal blood when he was young. But out of consideration for his identity and environment, he couldn't directly adopt Jiaoyang. Thus, he entrusted Jiaoyang to his good brother Xing Zihua to adopt. To the outside world, he just said that Xing Zihua had a daughter, and no one would doubt it. But the problem now was that East Great Emperor had long known that goddess Jiaoyang was his daughter. Furthermore, he had entrusted his daughter to his trusted good brother. Why was this Xing Zihua's entire clan exterminated for the crime of treason? This was the biggest question Wang Ling had after learning the whole story. But it was obvious that this had touched a sore spot for East Great Emperor, so he didn't pursue the matter. Wang Ling wasn't a person who liked gossip. Moreover, he had no interest in these ancient affairs that were like a garrulous book about family trifles. Now, he just wanted to know who this Tao ancestor Wang was. And who was the mastermind behind this ancient transmigration. Judging from the clues he had collected so far, Tao ancestor Wang was only a suspect, and wasn't necessarily the mastermind behind this. But apart from Tao ancestor Wang, who else had the ability to do this? Bai Zhao. Or the god of the grave. Although Wang Ling had his doubts, he didn't think that these two people had the ability to set up such a scheme. Otherwise, they would have already defeated him in the previous contests. According to the progress of the diary, what Wang Ling had to do next was to follow East Great Emperor to Yangxin Palace Hall to meet goddess Jiaoyang, who had completely changed her appearance and had even lost that crucial memory. There were so many teleportation spirit arrays in the huge imperial palace that it was impossible to count them all. Thousands of them were intertwined with each other. East Great Emperor had ordered people to set them up, and no one knew the overall layout better than him. Therefore, wherever one wanted to go, they only needed to be proficient in using these spirit arrays to easily complete the teleportation. When Wang Ling arrived at Yangxin Palace Hall, he found goddess Jiaoyang covered in bandages already sitting behind the gauze curtain. In addition, Yi Ren, the only person who knew what was going on, and East Great Emperor's most trusted palace maid were waiting quietly in a secret corner. The rest of the people stood outside the hall in 2 rows and listened to the announcement with their heads lowered. This palace maid's identity is not ordinary. Is he also a member of the royal family? Wang Ying asked directly. That's right, she's the saintess of the Holy Stone cult. I came here to gain experience. The Great East Emperor replied silently in his heart. Oh. Wang Ying answered lightly. However, his gaze remained on the saintess of the Holy Stone sect. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that this saintess had a familiar feeling. In fact, it was not only Wang Ying who felt this way. Wang Ling also felt that there was something wrong with this holy girl. It wasn't just the saintess who felt that something was wrong. Even goddess Jiao Yang felt that something was wrong. The haughty goddess was sitting there, her well-behaved posture revealing a kind of uneasiness. Wang Ling felt that this sitting posture was a little familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Sometimes, even the slightest movement could make people feel that something was wrong. Thus, Wang Ling's gaze was fixed on this goddess Jiao Yang, hoping to find some clues. During this process, she was also secretly sizing up the Great East Emperor from ancient times. For some reason, she felt that the way the Great East Emperor looked at her seemed a little strange. It was a kind that couldn't be described with words. Her first intuition was that it was very similar to the way Old Man's son looked at her. Reporting to Emperor, Xing Jiaoyang has arrived. She awaits Emperor's judgment. After confirming that the doors of Yangxin Palace were closed and that the Great East Emperor was sitting firmly in his seat, Yi Ren immediately bowed and reported. Thank you for your hard work, Yi Ren. The Great East Emperor said, in addition, Yi Ren, you must remember that she will no longer be called Xing Jiaoyang. From now on, she will follow my surname, Xiao. Her name will be Xinyan. Yes. Yi Ren nodded. Then he looked at Goddess Jiaoyang. Aren't you going to thank Emperor for the name? While Lotus Sun was in a daze, the Great East Emperor hurriedly waved his hand, the expression in his eyes unusually kind. Forget it, it's just a name, no need to be so polite. After all, Yi Ren was the white-robed steward at the Great East Emperor's side, and he knew more secrets about the Great East Emperor than anyone else in the Imperial Palace. Therefore, after hearing this name, Zhang Xipei also quickly received physical feedback from Yi Ren's body and searched for a memory related to this name. It was the truth of the Xing family's rebellion back then, and it was an exceptionally cruel part of history. But for Zhang Xipei, who was also an ancient being, it wasn't so hard to accept. He had long since become numb to all kinds of open and veiled struggles in the ancient times. Back then, it was because he couldn't afford to play with these people that he embarked on a road of no return that relied on stealing to make a living. But who would have thought that after such a long time, not only would he be reborn in modern cultivation society, he would even serve as a consultant for the entire Songhai City anti-pickpocketing squad. Just as Zhang Xipei was in a daze, the Great East Emperor spoke again. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, the 4 Emperors' Assembly will be held on a trade planet in the Central Territory. Xia Xinyan will also come with me. According to the script, Zhang Xipei hurriedly retorted, Emperor, please reconsider. Even if you have already changed your identity, it's still risky. The Great West Emperor is crafty, if something goes wrong. It's fine. The Great East Emperor said calmly, I want to slap his face in front of him. I want him to never have any evil thoughts about Xinyan in the future. Otherwise, my Supreme Light Mahamayuri will burn the Western Territory into purgatory at any time. This domineering statement reverberated through the spacious hall, causing the atmosphere to become slightly heavy. Very well, Emperor, since that's the case, please allow me and Miss Holy Maiden of Holy Stone Cult to accompany us as guards. Zhang Xipei bowed. The 2 of you are the people I trust the most. I will naturally bring you along with me. The Great East Emperor said, also, I need you to inquire about something before we go to the trade planet. Please instruct me, Emperor, Zhang Xipei replied. I remember there's a very famous restaurant on the trade planet in the Central Territory called Manjianglu. Yes, there is such a place. May I ask if Emperor is inviting a friend? No, I want to eat it myself, the Great East Emperor thought for a bit, then said cautiously, go ask the chef over there if he knows how to make crispy noodle snacks. Lotus Sun, Wang Zhen and Zhang Zipei. Chapter 1860. This question was more like the secret code used by intelligence agents in spy films. It made the other three people, except for the Great East Emperor, raise their heads. They looked at each other, and although they didn't say anything, they had already activated the team telepathy spell. No way, it can't be so coincidental. Wang Zhen winked at Zhang Zizi in the dark. Calm down, Zhang Zizi advised, tilting his head. At the same time, he had an expression of disbelief on his face. Maybe this is a special hobby shared by strong people who appreciate each other. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is Lingzhenren. So there really were crispy noodle snacks in ancient times. Lotus Sun was very curious. This? I'm not sure. Zhang Zizi sweated. He wasn't interested in snacks to begin with. Although he had claimed to have stolen everything before, that was only limited to the more valuable things. But Zhang Zizi still had his doubts about whether this East Great Emperor in front of him was Wang Ling, but the problem is that Lingzhenren isn't that talkative, so I think we should be more cautious about whether East Great Emperor is Lingzhenren or not. Hearing this, Lotus Sun lowered her head and thought for a while before replying, Senior Zhang is right. Student Wang Ling indeed isn't that talkative, but CEO Ing might not be. If Student Wang Ling and CEO Ing are both in East Great Emperor's body, then the person speaking is likely to be CEO Ing. Another possibility is that Student Wang Ling is so awesome. I think he must have entered this mysterious world by himself, instead of being sucked in passively like us. So if Student Wang Ling entered this world of his own accord, then he might have taken the identity of East Great Emperor. This also means that the body Student Wang Ling is using also has East Great Emperor's own consciousness. This series of strong analysis was clear and logical, and there were almost no loopholes in it. Zhang Zizi was instantly stunned. Indeed. After eliminating all the impossibilities, there was only one answer, no matter how impossible the remaining situation was. Awesome, Rong Rong. Qingyi always praised you for being smart. After hearing this analysis, Wang Zhen's expression was especially pleasantly surprised. The three of them were discussing in secret using the team telepathy spell, whether they should go one step further and verify Wang Ling's identity with East Great Emperor. At that moment, a familiar voice was suddenly heard. Hee hee, so it's you guys. I thought you guys were a little weird. This was Wang Ying's voice. The three of them hadn't expected Wang Ling and Wang Ying to directly monitor their telepathic communication spell. It's really you, CEO Ying. Then classmate Wang Ling. Hearing the familiar voice, Lotus Sun was instantly pleasantly surprised. He's here too. Didn't the East Great Emperor keep looking at you? Actually, it was the commander who was looking at you. Classmate Wang Ling, is he looking at me? It seems that this sitting posture is slightly familiar. Compared to Goddess Jiaoyang's original appearance, your sitting posture is too obedient. So that's how it is. Lotus Sun's face turned slightly red. She was a little happy. That's right, there's another person besides me and you. However, this person doesn't know about you. I'm the one who has been passing the message on behalf of you. Do you understand what I mean? Understood. The three of them immediately nodded. At that moment, they suddenly heard the deep and magnetic voice of an unfamiliar man. Are you all done recognizing me? This younger brother still has business to attend to. Since you all came in with your upper bodies, please cooperate with me and continue this show. This was the voice of the East Great Emperor. At that moment, the East Great Emperor also joined the team voice chat. It was Wang Ling who had pulled him in. Coupled with Wang Ying's explanation to the East Great Emperor before Wang Ling pulled him in, the East Great Emperor immediately knew what was going on. Sure enough, everything was just as Lotus Sun had guessed. Wang Ling and Wang Ying entered the East Great Emperor's body at the same time, and the East Great Emperor also had his own consciousness. Since the East Great Emperor is here, it's easy. I wonder if this old man can ask the East Great Emperor how on earth we should get out. Zhang Zizi asked. In the team voice chat, Zhang Zizi's voice was his original voice. As soon as he spoke, the East Great Emperor immediately frowned. I know you, you're Zhang Zizi. Zhang Zizi was startled. The East Great Emperor actually knows who I am. East Great Emperor, I didn't expect you to actually be able to survive until the immemorial cultivation world. This was indeed out of my expectations. You must have stolen a lot of the imperial concubines in my harem. Hearing this, Zhang Zizi broke out in a sweat. You actually know, Wang Ling, Wang Zhen and Lotus Sun, East Great Emperor, I'm the East Great Emperor, of course I know. Zhang Zizi, but you never seem to investigate me, East Great Emperor, why should I investigate you? Instead, I should thank you. You've lightened my burden a lot. Everyone, East Great Emperor, forget it, let's not talk about this. Just now you asked how to get out. Actually, it's very simple to leave the world of my diary. You just need to cooperate with me to complete the rest of the script. Lotus Sun, Senior, the problem is that we're not the only ones trapped in this world. We haven't found our companions yet. That's even simpler. Since you've entered my diary. You'll be playing the roles that I've written about in my diary, and any character that has appeared before isn't a nobody. East Great Emperor replied, the 4 emperors will be gathering in 2 days, and all the important figures of the 4 territories will be present. You should be able to take this opportunity to find your friends. This is the last performance. Once it's over, the curtain will fall, and you'll be able to return to the modern world. It won't have any impact on your lives. As for the mastermind behind all this, I've already told Great God Wang Ying everything that needs to be said. I didn't hide anything at all. In short, this great senior behind the scenes isn't simple, and is someone that even we great emperors can't control. Also, this person isn't Dao Ancestor Wang. Zhang Zizi frowned. There aren't many people who can do this. It seems to be Dao Ancestor Wang. But you say it isn't Dao Ancestor Wang. Could there have been someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Dao Ancestor Wang in ancient times? There's always someone better, and even with my current vision, I can't say for sure that there isn't one. At this point, East Great Emperor raised his eyebrows. Since you're also an ancient being, Zhang Zizi, then you should be very clear. Before us ancient beings, the overlords of this universe weren't us cultivators from the old era. Perhaps they haven't gone extinct, and are staring at us from the darkness of the abyss. The error-free chapters of the daily life of the Immortal King will continue to be updated on the new C-Book Pavilion. There are no advertisements on the site, so please collect and recommend the new C-Book Pavilion. Those who like the daily life of the Immortal King, please collect. The daily life of the Immortal King's new books are updated the fastest. Chapter 1861. In ancient times, the trade star of the Central Territory actually referred to an entire galaxy. It was also the only rare pure land that didn't have any power disputes. Cultivators from the forces of the 4 major territories could use their own methods to conduct free trade here. There were all kinds of people from all walks of life, and it had always been a bustling area. There were 108 stars in the entire trade star system, and the upcoming gathering of the 4 emperors would focus on the central trade star. Logically speaking, an emperor's trip would be extremely ostentatious, and a divine beast carriage made up of 12 carefully selected divine beasts was almost the standard for an emperor's trip. But this time, perhaps because East Great Emperor wanted to cater to Wang Ling's usual style, he went the opposite way. He was only dressed in casual clothes. The only people he brought with him were the 3 people who had been in the main hall earlier. It looked like there were 4 people going, but in fact there were 8. After all, there was one living in each person's body. In East Great Emperor's view, it didn't matter whether the others went or not, as long as the great god in his body didn't leave. So even though he was going out incognito, East Great Emperor was especially confident because he had invited a god to possess him. In previous 4 emperors' gatherings, East Great Emperor would send out a lot of people to serve them, and there was no lack of all kinds of heaven-gifted geniuses who had been sent by the East Great Emperor's royal family to the palace to gain experience. In such a bustling place, it was common for the 4 territories to poach each other. Thus, after a 4 emperors' gathering, the number of participants and the number of people they brought would often be different, and even the people who came back would be different. The 4 territories usually looked peaceful, but in private, they were always fighting for talent. For example, the rare battle between East and West Great Emperor this time was also based on this battle for talent. If Goddess Jiao Yang hadn't turned to West Great Emperor and willingly become his pawn, East Great Emperor probably wouldn't have been so passive in the early stages of the battle. Actually, Wang Ling could tell. Currently, the 4 emperors of the 4 territories were still in a situation of mutual checks and balances. Take the battle between East and West Great Emperor for example. Although West Great Emperor had bestowed Goddess Jiao Yang with power, in fact, he hadn't personally fought on the battlefield in the end. Furthermore, his goal was only to help the Blazing Sun Goddess ascend to the throne, not to directly annex the Eastern Territory and attempt to become the Great Emperor of the Eastern and Western Territories. It just so happened that these Great Emperors were very sensitive to the battle between Great Emperors. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. Given the current situation, it was necessary for any of the domains to exist. Once this balance was broken, it would lead to a war between the cultivators of the 4 domains. The central trade star was full of ancient cities built from ancient bricks, just like what Wang Ling had imagined. If these buildings had been placed in modern times, they would have been an exceptionally magnificent relic of ancient cultivators. It was just that it was very rare for Wang Ling to see something of this scale in modern cultivation life. Even the holy beast King Luosha King's remains that he had visited before was just a drop in the bucket compared to the eternal world. After entering the central trade star, Lotus Sun saw some silver-armored guards of the ancient city flying in the air with all kinds of magic weapons in their hands. They looked alert and had sharp gazes, and as they flew in the air, they gave off a great sense of dignity and oppression. Isn't it said that the central region doesn't belong to any force? Lotus Sun couldn't help asking curiously. Miss Sun, you might not know, but these ancient city guards were selected by the great emperors of the 4 domains to guard this place. They are present in all the galaxies of the central region. Furthermore, every ancient city guard is of royal blood. Zhang Zizi explained, according to the 4 domains trade agreement, every 10 years, the 4 great emperors of the 4 domains will personally select the elites of the royal families in the central region to be on duty here. This is also a kind of experience. Once they return from their shifts, the members of the royal family will be rewarded by the great emperors. It's a benefit that's hard to describe with words. Great Emperor East laughed on the spot at these words. It looks like you've visited the homes of these royal families before. Of course, Zhang Zizi admitted generously without any hesitation. You're so generous. Wang Ying couldn't help laughing. It's all in the past, what's there to talk about? Besides, I, Zhang Zizi, have always only taken money, and have never relied on my realm to murder people for money. Zhang Zizi said, the central region may be peaceful, but that's only because of these ancient city guards. If you obtain some supreme treasure in the central region, you'll be in danger after you leave, and you might be targeted. You mean killing people and robbing them? Wang Ying asked. That's right. Zhang Zizi nodded. Unlike the modern cultivation world, the primordial era didn't have such sound laws, and there were too many unruly people. One Earth can be governed, but the galaxies are so big that there are bound to be places that can't be controlled. And these lawless places are places where all kinds of evil thrives. They used the team voice spell to discuss this. In fact, after hearing what Zhang Zizi said, Wang Ling was suddenly very curious about one thing. Would they directly run into Zhang Zizi and Li Xian from the primordial era while attending the Four Emperors gathering this time? After all, Dao ancestor Wang hadn't locked them up in the corpse picture at this time. The Four Emperors gathering was a big event, and many cultivators from all walks of life would come to watch. At the same time, it would greatly increase the overall trade volume of the trading galaxy. Once the overall trade volume increased, it meant that there would be more cultivators who would be able to find supreme treasures. These were all Zhang Zizi's targets. Thus, he thought it would be very interesting to run into the Zhang Zizi from before. Wang Ling and the others settled down in a restaurant. To Wang Ling's disappointment, the chef didn't know how to make crispy noodle snacks. But Wang Ling took this opportunity to hear some other secrets. Did you hear? The Emperor of the East region displayed the Supreme Light Peacock Wisdom King Dharma form. It's simply terrifying. This shows that the great emperors all have trump cards. It's better not to provoke them, those who covet the throne are simply courting death. But the Emperor of the West region doesn't seem convinced, and plans to sell some of the spoils of war he won in his fight with the Emperor of the East region at this auction. Those are immortal objects from the East region Imperial Palace, and are priceless. Ha ha ha, the Emperor of the West region himself never thought that the great Emperor of the East would hide such a trump card. He's definitely flustered and exasperated, so he can only look for a supplement here. But from what I see, it's not certain that this supplement will work. Brother, what do you mean? I heard that the famous godly thief Zhang Zizi is about to make a move. He says he wants to steal something that the Emperor of the West region is planning to auction. Is this true? It's true. The central auction house has already received a notice from Zhang Zizi. Hearing this, Wang Ling and the others were all shocked. They could already see that Zhang Zizi, who was playing the role of Yi Ren, was already holding his forehead with his head lowered. It was obvious that he also didn't want to face this part of history. Wang Ling was astonished. So it turned out that in ancient times, there was a bad habit of sending notice of theft. Deliberately notifying others first before stealing something, this was too Chinibu. Chapter 1862. There was no doubt that this was no different from a public execution for Zhang Ziqin. Although Wang Ling had already had a premonition, he still felt that it was incomparably amazing. Zhang Ziqin actually had to face his dark history again after thousands of years, and his mood at that moment must be exceptionally complicated. It was clear that Zhang Ziqin was blindly confident in his treasure-stealing skills, and didn't even care about the Emperor at all. He really had a lot of guts to directly steal something that the Emperor had put up for auction. So in history, was the theft successful this time? Wang Zhen couldn't help asking curiously. Of course it was successful, Zhang Ziqin said with a proud expression on his face. West Great Emperor didn't want to kill you? Wang Zhen asked again. He couldn't wait to skin me and chop off my hand. But at the time, he underestimated me and didn't care about me at all. That's not right. I remember that according to history, it didn't seem to be successful, East Great Emperor said at that moment. Actually, it was successful. Zhang Ziqin chuckled. But in order to save face, West Great Emperor used a temporary replica to sell it, and then ordered people to buy it back at a high price. To the outside world, he just said that I, Zhang Ziqin, had failed in the theft. I, Zhang Ziqin, have never failed in the industry. How could I let him spread rumors? At that time, I was furious and decided to carry out a precise revenge. So, I almost didn't let off any of the imperial concubines in West Great Emperor's harem. So, although I, Zhang Ziqin, haven't married, I should have left behind a lot of children. I found out that Senior Zhang, it's really a miracle that you survived. Lotus Sun couldn't help giving him a like in the team voice spell. Logically speaking, Zhang Ziqin's realm hadn't reached its peak yet, but he had actually survived the Emperor's pursuit. This was really not easy. Central Trade Star, Central Auction House. This was the largest auction house that integrated the 108 stars of the entire Trade Star system. All the most precious treasures and big deals on the Trade Star would be gathered here. There was still some time before the Four Emperors gathering, so East Great Emperor decided to come to the auction house to join in the fun. This was originally a historical event, so he had to go. The magnificent palace with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters occupied a vast area. Wang Ling saw several real divine beasts guarding the gate, who exuded an imposing aura without being angry, crouching at the gate under the lead of the auction house manager. An ancient lion dragon beast. I've read about it in the ancient records at home, Wang Zhen exclaimed. As the name implied, the lion flood dragon beast had the head of a lion and the tail of a flood dragon. Its body was huge, like two small mountains. It was a famous divine beast from ancient times. It was extremely difficult to tame, but once it was tamed, it would be loyal and devoted to its master. It was not easy for a capable person to tame one. Every time the central auction house held an auction, there would be a total of 4 tamed primordial lion dragon beasts guarding the entrance. It was enough to show how powerful the owner behind the auction house was. A few years ago, I remember that there were only 2 divine beasts guarding the gate, lion flood dragon beasts. I didn't expect there to be 4 this year. Moreover, they were all adults. The owner of the central auction house is indeed powerful. An old woman with snow-white hair coiled up high stepped out of a bronze chariot with the help of a walking stick. She had a kind face and exuded an imposing aura without being angry. She was a top expert in secret. With one glance, Wang Ling could tell that this old woman was no ordinary person. At the very least, she was a progenitor expert who had just entered the Dao ancestor realm not long ago. This is the leader of Immortal Mountain Sect, Madame Shanxiu. Zhang Zi secretly introduced her. So it's the leader. No wonder she has such an extraordinary bearing, Lotus Sun exclaimed. Cultivators from ancient times had retained their most primitive style and were of all shapes and sizes, which was very different from modern cultivation society. This wasn't something that could be found in school textbooks in the modern cultivation world. Seeing with one's eyes and feeling with one's heart would be of great help and enlightenment. Welcome, Madame Shanxiu. As soon as the auction house manager saw the old woman, he immediately knew who she was and bowed in greeting. Madame Shanxiu nodded slightly with a kind expression on her face. She swept her gaze over the 4 divine beasts guarding the gate, then walked in unhurriedly. Even a progenitor expert would feel a little pressure in the face of these 4 enormous divine beasts guarding the gate. If even a grand progenitor expert felt this way, then the rest of the people who had entered the auction house were even more apprehensive. So scary, don't worry, these lion flood dragons have been tamed. They won't attack people without orders. Passing by the gate, an insider said, they guard the gate and serve as a good deterrent. It's also a kind of screening, those who are too weak aren't qualified to enter the central auction house. They'll faint as soon as they pass through the gate. I see. Hearing this, a passerby on the side nodded hurriedly. But there's still something I don't understand. Why did they put 4 at the gate this time? It said that the famous godly thief Zhang Zidi will be here today to steal the great emperor's auction items, so 2 more were added at the last minute. Wang Ling and the others, Great Emperor East was puzzled in the team telepathy spell. It definitely wouldn't be a problem for you to go in with Li Ren's body, but with your realm at the time, could you enter the auction house without a hitch? There's only one entrance to the central auction house, and the rest of the hall is protected by a barrier. If you want to get inside, you can only go through the main gate. Indeed. In a trance, Zhang Zidi also felt like his memory was a little messed up. In my memory, it was very smooth to enter the central auction house back then, and there shouldn't have been so many gatekeeping divine beasts at all. So, this emperor has always wondered if you were bragging. Great Emperor East was speechless. He never had a very good impression of Zhang Zidi. His only good impression was that Zhang Zidi had harmed Great Emperor West's imperial concubines later in history. Although a small number of Great Emperor East's imperial concubines had also been harmed by Zhang Zidi, but while Zhang Zidi was a scourge, he didn't leave behind any seeds to sprout in the East Imperial Palace next year, unlike Great Emperor West's side, which was already a vast prairie. Whether I'm bragging or not, we'll know later. Zhang Zidi snickered. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Let's go in first. Great Emperor East waved his hand, too lazy to bicker with Zhang Zidi. Dressed in civilian clothes, they pretended to be passers-by cultivators, with Wang Ling, who was playing the role of Great Emperor East, walking at the front. At that moment, Wang Ling could feel the auction house manager's gaze on him as he moved, as well as the gazes of the 4 gatekeeping lion-dragon beasts. This was originally a kind of deterrence. Everyone who entered the central auction house would experience this kind of intense gaze to prove that they had a high enough realm to enter the auction house and participate in the transaction. However, something unexpected happened. Just as the gazes of the 4 lion-dragon beasts fell on Wang Ling, a terrifying and dangerous aura was instantly reflected back at him. All spiritual pressure and oppressive gazes had no effect on Wang Ling, and instead triggered Wang Ling's passive ability to reflect oppression, just for a moment. The eyes of the 4 gatekeeping lion-dragon beasts widened as they sweated profusely. Because there were so many people entering at the same time, they had no idea who on earth was reflecting this oppressive force. It was just that when that person passed through the gate, it was as if a large machete had been directly pressed against their necks, making them feel cold all over. Rumble. Just as Wang Ling entered the auction house, there was the rumble of a huge object falling to the ground in front of the gate. The commotion was so huge that the ground beneath their feet trembled. Wang Ling never thought that just by walking through the gate, he would actually scare off 4 lion-dragon beasts. He sighed in his heart. This was too useless. What kind of divine beasts were they? They weren't even as strong as his loopy toad. Chapter 1863. The gatekeeping divine beasts had suddenly fallen to the ground, and none of the 4 lion flood dragons were left. They were all foaming at the mouth and twitching on the ground, and no one knew what had happened. Even so, the central auction house's management was still orderly. They were usually prepared for this kind of emergency response, but it was a little rare for all the gatekeeping divine beasts to fall at once. A tall woman in a cheongsam with an almost perfect figure and a communications jade in her hand gave instructions on the spot. Her name was Chen Yanin, the head of the central auction house's management team, and she was responsible for maintaining order in the auction house. Team 1, listen to my command, immediately use the backup gatekeeping divine beasts. Team 2, move all 4 lion flood dragons away, and don't cause a jam in front of the auction house. Chen Yanin reacted quickly and spoke quickly. In addition, I need to report this to the president. I will personally report the situation to him, and in the meantime, you will take over maintaining order in front of the door and listen to the deputy manager's command. After entering the auction house, Wang Ling immediately heard all the arrangements in front of the door. It could only be said that this central auction house was more formidable than he had imagined. After all, this was during the 4 emperors' gathering, and it was a serious incident for the gatekeeping divine beasts to make such a mistake. However, the central auction house hadn't been thrown into disarray by this unexpected situation, which showed how well prepared their emergency response was. But after what had happened, there was suddenly more to talk about in the auction house's hall, and it instantly became even livelier. Strange, these 4 lion flood dragons are full of energy and are plump and strong. They don't look sick at all. Why did they suddenly faint? Didn't that Zhang Zidi say he was going to steal Great West Emperor's auction item today? Maybe he did it. That's right. It must be Zhang Zidi. Maybe he's already snuck in. But that doesn't make sense. Is Zhang Zidi's realm that strong? Even if he did it, is it possible for him to take down 4 divine beasts at once? God knows. He's been sneaking around all day. Maybe he managed to steal some secret medicine that instantly increased his strength. Several cultivators who had come to participate in the auction were talking loudly in the hall, and Zhang Zidi, who was pretending to be Li Ren, broke out in a cold sweat. Now, he finally knew why there hadn't been so many gatekeeping divine beasts when he had come back then. Moreover, he also knew why he was being hunted by the Great West Emperor and the president of the central auction house after the end of the auction. This bank manager was a lion flood dragon fanatic and loved his 4 lion flood dragons very much. Now that the crowd had pinned the blame on him, it was no wonder that the bank manager hated him so much. At this moment, spiritual light appeared in the sky. Above a huge cloud, a young man in golden armor appeared, holding an iron throne in his hand. He was extremely domineering. Beside him stood a snake-bodied woman. They were originally from the human race, but they were willing to accept the Great Western Emperor's implantation spell. They were implanted with the blood of a divine beast called the Snake God, and then turned into this half-beast state. Their figures were graceful, and they stood to the left and right, completely ignoring the gazes of others. They only focused on serving the golden-armored young man. That's King Tinkuan under the Great Western Emperor. Someone cried out in alarm, recognizing this person's origins. This iron throne was bestowed by the Great Western Emperor. It indicated that King Tinkuan didn't need to pay his respects in the palace of the Great Western Emperor. He could sit on equal footing with the Great Western Emperor. No one could enjoy the same treatment as King Tinkuan. This was a general who guarded the order of the Great Western Emperor in the Western region and pacified wars everywhere, and was regarded as the symbol and representative of the Great Western Emperor. No one thought that King Tinkuan would actually come to this central auction house this time. I heard that someone wants to make trouble at this auction. This king wants to see if that Zhang Zizi can steal the Chaos Immortal Stone that I, the Great Western Emperor, want to sell right under my nose. He sneered and directly stepped through the door with a majestic gait and extraordinary domineering air. In the great hall, the various powers had gathered. Batch after batch of people arrived, all of them with esteemed statuses. They were all well-known figures. Wang Ling had a hunch that some of his other companions, who had been scattered all over this world, would definitely be in this auction house at this time. The key was how to accurately distinguish them. Wang Ling's gaze was languid as he swept his eyes over everyone. Then, the Great Eastern Emperor led everyone to a private room on the upper floor. This was a VIP room, a must-have in the auction house, and it was impossible to sit here without a certain amount of wealth. As soon as she pushed the door open and entered, she was deeply attracted by the dazzling array of exquisite jade porcelain in front of her. Objects from the ancient times were extraordinary, and she was always curious about them. "Sir, if you want to sit here, you have to promise to win at least one treasure in this auction." At that moment, Wang Ling heard the voice of the team leader who had been in charge of order at the door. Chen Yanan had never seen the Great Eastern Emperor before, and when faced with him who was out incognito this time, she had no idea what kind of background this plainly dressed young man in front of her was. Thus, she kindly reminded Wang Ling that there was a minimum expenditure in this private room, and that he had to guarantee that he would win at least one treasure in this auction before he could sit. "I understand the rules. The Great Eastern Emperor smiled, then waved his hand to indicate that Zhang Zizi would pay. Li Ren had already prepared all the expenses for this four emperors' assembly in his storage bag. The ancient cultivator's currency was the Chaos Spirit Stone, a spirit stone that combined the power of chaos, which was already extinct in modern cultivation society. Without hesitation, Zhang Zizi directly paid Chen Yanin a full 100 million Chaos Spirit Stones as a deposit for the private room. If they didn't win at least one treasure in the end, the deposit couldn't be refunded. Sir is generous. Chen Yanin nodded in satisfaction. She was just doing things according to the rules, and didn't mean to look down on anyone. After all, the people who could enter this auction house weren't simple. After receiving the deposit, Chen Yanin personally escorted them in, then saluted at the door before slowly strolling away. She's just a central auction house administrator, but she doesn't know the seniors. She was incredulous. The people in the imperial palace rarely go out, so it's normal that she doesn't know them. Li Ren is Great Eastern Emperor's personal guard, and even fewer outsiders know about him. Zhang Zizi replied through the team voice spell, also, even if they're lucky enough to meet the emperor, most people don't have enough cultivation to see his true face. This answer instantly made her understand. This effect was similar to Wang Ling's Great Shielding spell. Great Eastern Emperor, we just spent 100 million, how much do we have left? In the private room, Zhang Zizi immediately imitated Li Ren's tone and replied, Your Majesty, there are 2 billion Chaos Spirit Stones left. Great Eastern Emperor was shocked. But I remember that I only had Li Ren prepare 500 million, Zhang Zizi chuckled. It's like this, I couldn't help it just now, and it was a little smooth. If everyone is a little smooth, they won't notice. Wang Ling, Wang Ying, Wang Zhen, Lotus Sunday. As expected of you. Lotus Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Senior Zhang, I thought you changed, this is bad behavior. Zhang Zizi couldn't help sighing. Under the influence of the rule of law in modern cultivation society, it's been a long time since I've done something like this except for when I have to carry out missions. But now that I'm back here, I still can't help it. It's a conditioned reflex, I can't blame it all on me. It's fine, if I don't use the money later, I'll donate it all. I'll just think of it as robbing the rich to help the poor. Chapter 1864. Casually taking advantage of others was Zhang Zistiel's old habit. According to the data from several previous experiments on Zhang Zistiel by the higher-ups of Battle Sect, Zhang Zistiel's hands and brain were completely separate. That was to say, when Zhang Zistiel took advantage of others, 7 out of 10 of them were purely passive skills, which would suddenly activate. Walking on the street, from one end to the other, there would always be something in his pocket that even Zhang Zistiel had no memory of. Everyone was helpless about this. Although they had already tried their best to help Zhang Zistiel correct this bad habit, he still occasionally couldn't help it. Senior Zhang's ability to take advantage of others has always been amazing. Lotus Sun smiled helplessly. But won't Senior Zhang's actions affect the course of history? Absolutely not. East Great Emperor also laughed. Zhang Zistiel from ancient times was also present at today's auction. Even if someone else discovers that something is missing, in the end, they will think that it was Zhang Zistiel from ancient times. Everyone, this was the first time in his life that he had ever seen someone use this method of framing himself. The course of history, the inevitability of history, hiding in East Great Emperor's body, Wang Ling carefully pondered these 2 points, and became increasingly curious about the mastermind behind the scenes. He rarely had the experience of being arranged by someone else like this. Although he was a little unhappy, he also felt a rare sense of novelty. If the other party had the ability to set him up, didn't that mean that this person had the strength to fight him? He wasn't very curious. What Baijia? What god of the grave? He didn't care about these rotten fish and shrimps. As a progressive young man in the modern cultivation society's education system, he felt that he should look to the long-term future, and always had expectations for the future. He looked forward to the appearance of someone who could truly unlock all his seals and let him fight to his heart's content. Heavenly Room 1. Who on earth is that person? It feels a little special. In Room 9, West Great Emperor's representative, King Tianquan, spoke lightly. The snake maid next to him bent over and asked, "Should we check his identity?" King Tianquan thought for a bit, then waved his hand. "Forget it. Anyone who can afford to sit in this private room isn't an ordinary person. There's no need to deliberately test who the other party is. We'll know when the auction begins." His gaze was fixed on the private room Wang Ling and the others were in, and there was some interest in his eyes. Soon, the auction began. A young man in a black robe and the auctioneer, Miss Chen Yanin, went on stage together to host the auction. Many people were surprised that such a young man would be the auctioneer of this auction. Isn't he too young? It's an important auction during the assembly of the four emperors, and they actually let a hothead be the auctioneer? If the auction item is a heaven treasure, will he faint as soon as he touches it? Don't look down on this little brother. His name is Lu Renwen. I heard that he's the son of the Central Auction House's president. At the age of 9, he already had a sage body. He's stronger than many of you sitting here. The moment he said that, many people instantly fell silent. Becoming a sage at the age of 9. What kind of concept was that? Without a doubt, he was a genius. For a long time, the identity of the president of the Central Auction House had been a mysterious existence in the hearts of many people. But they had never thought that this president's son would be so heaven-defying. If the son's aptitude was already like this, then wouldn't the father's talent be even more astonishing? Wang Ling sat in the VIP room at the top, taking in everything at a glance. There were also auction houses like this in modern cultivation society, but Wang Ling had never been interested in the magic treasures being auctioned. None of them could beat the things in his king's treasure pants. Can I temporarily join the auction? Wang Ying asked. This was something that was not allowed in the modern cultivation society. Modern cultivators were very particular about rules and regulations, and required that all prepared items for auction be rigorously appraised in advance to ensure that there were no errors. They absolutely weren't allowed to join the auction midway. This was because there was a huge risk of substandard or fake goods. After all, it was very difficult to appraise a magic treasure in a very short period of time. This was a great test of an appraiser's ability, and if there was a mistake in the appraisal, the substandard or fake goods would be sold. Then in modern society, this auction house's life would come to an end. But it was very clear that in the eternal world, auction houses didn't have that many complicated rules. Hearing Wang Ying's question, East Great Emperor immediately replied in the team voice spell, "Of course. But there are requirements for the items to be auctioned." Why, do you want to add something to the auction? Won't it affect the course of history? Wang Ying asked cautiously. No. East Great Emperor shook his head without hesitation. After receiving his reply, Wang Ying also received Wang Ling's instructions, and continued to communicate with East Great Emperor. Very well, I'll give you something to sell later. As soon as the voice in the private room fell, the first item from the auction house was brought to the stage. It was an extremely exquisite bowl-shaped vessel that was completely transparent. It was made of a material similar to jade, and even its luster was similar. However, this was definitely not an ordinary jade bowl, but rather an undying artifact that was nurtured from the primal chaos. A natural all-life bowl, a treasure born from chaos. It has a 20% concentration of chaos. Wearing white gloves, the president's son, Lu Renwen, introduced the bowl's origin to everyone in a very professional manner. He touched it directly with his hands, completely unafraid of the primal chaos chi that seeped out of this chaos weapon. With the help of the projector ball magic treasure, an image of the bowl was magnified into the air, so that all the auction participants could clearly see all the details of the bowl. In the end, she's Jiaochu with a sage body. She's too strong to directly touch a chaos weapon. My focus seems to be wrong. A bowl with a 20% concentration of chaos is indeed very rare. But why is it called the All-Life Bowl? A lot of people were curious. Then, Lu Renwen began to introduce its currently known effects in more detail. After many experiments in this line, the results show that the All-Life Bowl has the effect of replication. The All-Life Bowl has the effect of replication. For example, as long as you place an intact elixir in the bowl. After a period of time, a new replicated elixir will be completely replicated in the bowl. However, the efficacy of the replicated elixir will be reduced to 52% to 78% of the original elixir, and it will consume the All-Life Bowl's concentration of chaos. The concentration of chaos can recover on its own. As long as you're not greedy and don't overuse it in one go, you can maintain this ability. Of course, if the concentration of chaos is directly replicated to zero, the bowl will directly shatter. The precise calculation and the incomparably detailed introduction of the magic treasure directly proved the professionalism of the central auction house. And Lu Renwen's introduction instantly caused many of the cultivators present to be tempted. To be able to directly replicate elixirs. If a high-quality treasure or tonic was placed inside, once the replication was successful, it meant that one could absorb even more medicinal efficacy. Furthermore, as long as one wasn't greedy, this bowl could be used continuously. This was undoubtedly a huge temptation to the cultivators who were bitterly searching for a breakthrough in the ancient times. Chapter 1865. This was a chaos tool with a special function. It was very unusual. However, in reality, there were countless chaos tools that were born naturally in the universe that had special functions. There was a dazzling variety of abilities. But most of them were useless and impractical, and could only be broken down into fine particles and refined into chaos crystals to help the ancient ones cultivate. But this life and all things bowl's function was a little unusual, and actually had the special ability of a treasure bowl. Wang Ling felt that if he could enchant it, the replica created by this bowl might be far more powerful than the original. But he wasn't interested in this bowl. Even if these ancient ones were going to fight over it, it was just a bowl to him. Among the Heaven's Path techniques, his Great Replication technique could perfectly achieve this function. In the next few minutes, Chen Yanan was in charge of delivering the bowl upstairs to the VIP rooms that were interested in it. The god-level tycoons in the VIP rooms had the right to touch and appraise it at close range. If they were interested, they just needed to light the red spirit lantern hanging in front of the door. After injecting some spirit energy into it, the lantern would light up completely. This bowl is very good. The concentration of chaos is also suitable, and there's a lot of room for improvement. If you take it to an expert refiner and modify it, it'll have a bright future, said an old woman. This was none other than Madame Shanxiu, the head of Immortal Mountain Sect. This was a rare praise from an almighty, and instantly made everyone even more interested in the bowl. Just when Wang Ling thought that someone was going to make an extremely outrageous bid, in the end, in the main hall below, a young man in a luxurious outer robe raised his hand. I bid 10,000 chaos spirit stones. Wang Ling choked when he heard this. 10,000 chaos spirit stones. He had thought that this bowl would cost at least 1 million. Furthermore, everyone present seemed to have brought a lot of money with them, ranging from millions to tens of millions. Otherwise, Zhang Xipei wouldn't have been able to steal so much at once. In the end, Wang Ling was a little surprised that the person below had only bid 10,000. Chaos weapons are so cheap. Wang Ying was also amazed, and immediately asked. It's not that chaos weapons are cheap, it's that chaos spirit stones are valuable. Everyone here is a dignitary, so it's normal for them to bring a lot of money. But this is how things should be, Zhang Zipei answered. It was only now that Wang Ling finally understood how wasteful it was for East Great Emperor to directly have Zhang Zi stake 100 million spirit stones for this VIP room. The East Great Emperor also smiled. It's mainly because this is the first auction item. He wouldn't ask for such a high price. The good stuff was at the back. Don't look at how restless these people are. In fact, they are all very cunning. Senior, I have a question. Doesn't the auction house set a minimum price? Lotus Sun asked. According to the central auction house's rules, there is no reserve price for the first auction item. It can be considered a special benefit of the auction house, the East Great Emperor replied. So that was how it was, the others nodded in agreement. I'll bid 11,000 Chaos Spirit Stones. 20,000. Please don't fight with me. I'm determined to get this bowl. This time, Wang Ling was completely bewildered by the pricing standards of ancient times. He didn't expect the Chaos Spirit Stones to be so valuable. In his opinion, they were just broken stones floating in the primal chaos of the universe, and he could casually pick up quite a few of them. Listening to the incessant bids from below, his heart drummed. He didn't know how much he would be able to sell the thing he was going to sell for, and he was extremely nervous. In the end, the bowl was won by a young man in the hall for 160,000 Chaos Spirit Stones. The second auction item was the skull of a divine beast. Like the first auction item, the auctioneer Lu Renwen was the first to give a detailed introduction of the skull. This is the skull of the Jade Fire Primordial Thunder and Lightning Universe-shaking Devil Tianxiang 8-eyed 9-tailed steel-winged skyfire 4-legged beast. After Lu Renwen finished speaking, Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Wang Ying and Wang Zhen were all stupefied. How could the name of this divine beast be so long? Why couldn't it be abbreviated? It was such a long list, he really couldn't remember it wrong. But as a professional auctioneer, Lu Renwen still showed his professional attitude. Jade Fire Primordial Thunder and Lightning Universe-shaking Devil Tianxiang 8-eyed 9-tailed steel-winged skyfire 4-legged beast. As we all know, this is a very rare divine beast of the universe. Its genes and bloodline later evolved into a series of divine beasts. Kuanpeng, Cheongqi, Baifang and so on, all of which are related to it by blood. Lu Renwen said, the skull of the Jade Fire Primordial Thunder and Lightning Universe-shaking Devil Tianxiang 8-eyed 9-tailed steel-winged skyfire 4-legged beast that we got today is only a small part of it, but its value is immeasurable. It can be used to assist in cultivation, and can even be used to refine into one's own magic weapon. Perhaps there will be unexpected gains. For the second item, each bid increment must be no less than 50,000 Chaos Spirit Stones. As soon as he said that, the audience burst into an uproar. There was immediately a heated discussion. This central auction house was too powerful to actually be able to get their hands on such a rare divine beast skull. The group instantly rubbed their palms together. Wang Ling saw a few people below stand up as if they were performing a group comedy. This skull of the Jade Fire Primordial Thunder and Lightning Universe-shaking Devil Tianxiang 8-eyed 9-tailed steel-winged skyfire 4-legged beast is something I must have. I offer 200,000 Chaos Spirit Stones. If fellow Taoists are willing to let me have it, I will be eternally grateful. Hee, do you think this skull is yours just because you said the name smoothly? Someone immediately stood up and said unconvinced. It was as if he was deliberately competing to see who had the smoothest tongue. He read out the complete string of names even faster. My lord is very interested in the skull of the Jade Fire Primordial Thunder and Lightning Universe-shaking Devil Tianxiang 8-eyed 9-tailed steel-winged skyfire 4-legged beast, and hopes to use it in medicine. Whoever dares to snatch it, once you leave the central territory with the skull, be careful of your life. I offer 280,000 Chaos Spirit Stones. Only 280,000. Brother, there's no point in threatening others here. I offer 500,000. A middle-aged man laughed. He had slick-back blonde hair and was dressed in gorgeous clothes. Judging from his aura, he was also a big shot. No one knows this jade fire primordial thunder and lightning universe-shaking devil Tianxiang eight-eyed nine-tailed steel-winged skyfire four-legged beast better than me. It's only in my hands that it can display its true value. The opening bid of 500,000 instantly gave Wang Ling a sense of the rich and overbearing atmosphere of an auction house. Wang Ling could also see it now. For these godly tycoons, it actually didn't matter how much an item was sold for. Whether it was expensive or cheap, the first thing was to have momentum. Sometimes, an item was sold for a high price not because it was worth the money, but mostly because of the higher-ups. Chapter 1866. For the sake of a spirit beast skull, these ancient dignitaries in the hall were all in a frenzy. The skull of an ancient divine beast like this had an extraordinary origin. What was even more precious was that this skull symbolized the origin of several bloodlines. Even if he didn't use it after buying it, there was still a lot of room for appreciation if he kept it by his side. Of course, although it was good, it was still useless to him. We have to bid for this skull. I remember that you were the final winner of this skull, Zhang Zipi said at that moment. East Great Emperor nodded. Bid. Zhang Zipi, how much is appropriate? East Great Emperor, I didn't write down the specific details in my diary, but it doesn't matter. Just make sure this skull is mine. But my suggestion is that we don't bid in this round. We can put up an auction item, and use the proceeds from the auction to offset the cost. As soon as he said this, Zhang Zipi immediately looked enlightened. Right. I remember. That's what happened. Back then, you sold one thing and used the money from that thing to buy a bunch of things, but I can't remember what you sold. After all, the timeline spanned a long time, and Zhang Zipi only had vague memories of what had happened in the past, and had long since forgotten the specific details. At that moment, East Great Emperor suddenly smiled meaningfully. This thing isn't mine. It's an auction item provided by Guru Wang Ying. Wang Ling was blank when he heard this. He hadn't expected things to fall back on him so soon. He had been thinking about what to sell, but according to old Wang's family rules, he couldn't use his own abilities to make money, so it was obviously inappropriate to take out the divine objects in Wang Zhibao's pants for auction. After thinking for a long time, a slender object with a golden flash and a vortex finally appeared in front of East Great Emperor. What powerful spirit power! No. It's not just spirit power, there are many other sources of energy. There's also rich primal chaos chi. East Great Emperor's eyes instantly lit up. There was no doubt that this shiny slender object gave him a pleasant surprise, as if he had drawn a golden legend. His reaction was quick, and he immediately lit the lantern in front of the VIP room to call the appraiser upstairs. Come, take a look. How much can this item be sold for? The East Great Emperor had a confident look on his face as he handed the golden thread to the appraiser. The appraiser took it with both hands. Before he could appraise it, he smelled a strong fragrance. After a moment of careful observation, the auctioneer revealed an incomparably shocked expression. Forgive this old man's poor eyesight. I really can't tell what kind of divine beast's hair this is. So, you can't sell it? No, of course it can be sold. The old appraiser looked excited. This thing is too strong. Not only does a tiny strand of hair emit a refreshing fragrance like a spring breeze, it actually contains such a powerful energy. If we can obtain this divine beast's hair, we can use it to refine elixirs or use it to refine weapons. There will be extraordinary benefits. It can even be used as the core of a formation. With this hair as the eye of the formation, it can change the flow of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, aiding in the cultivation of spiritual chi. If the sect is built around this formation, they won't have to worry about the loss of spiritual chi for thousands of years. This introduction made everyone dumbfounded. Lotus Sun laughed. Is it really that valuable? Could old Sir have made a mistake? This old man definitely won't make a mistake. It's just that I can't tell what kind of divine beast's hair it is, so I wanted to ask. Sorry, I don't know either. East Great Emperor spread his hands. I just happened to obtain it. I haven't verified what kind of divine beast it is yet. There's no other way. If we want to participate in the auction, we can only package it up for this hair, the appraiser said. Package it up? How? Wang Jin asked. It's to perfect the information on this divine beast's hair. Make up a story. The old appraiser wasn't surprised as he said, for example, do you really think there's a divine beast with such a long name? That's just something we made up. It's actually made up. Lotus Sun was shocked. There's no other way. In order to make the product look better, we can only package it up. The appraiser said, the name is long to make people feel unfamiliar with this divine beast. But all the participants in the auction are dignitaries in the cultivation world, and it's impossible for them to publicly say that they don't know the origin of this divine beast. Thus, no one will care about the authenticity of this divine beast's name. On the contrary, in order to show that they are familiar with this divine beast, no matter how long the name is, they'll say it without a single mistake. Otherwise, do you think that such a long name is for those unscrupulous biographers to fill up the word count? I see. Lotus Sun was enlightened. Wang Ling, the appraiser, I'm telling you all this because I want to tell you that we're on the same team now. In order to sell it at a high price, we need everyone's cooperation. No matter how outrageous the story is, you have to stay calm. Lotus Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But we don't know how to make up stories. At most, we can think of a name. The appraiser thought for a while, then said calmly, that's easy. Just think of a name, and leave the rest to us. A few minutes later, Lu Rinwen received this piece of divine beast hair that had been added to the auction at the last minute, along with a written description. The divine beast hair had already been covered in a cover, and it was packaged extremely well. The expression on his face was very calm as he skimmed through the description, then said in a loud voice, Ladies and gentlemen, the first temporary auction item of this auction has been produced. This is an item provided by the guest in Heavenly Room 1, and the proceeds from this auction can be used directly for other auctions in this auction. After saying that, he opened the black cover, and in an instant, the shiny golden hair gave off an incomparably dazzling light. Lu Rinwen said, As you can see, according to the professional appraisal results of our appraiser, this is a very, very rare piece of divine beast hair. The hair of a perfect Tianluo raccoon. What? So it's the hair of a perfect Tianluo raccoon. I've heard of this divine beast. Oh my god. Such strong spirit power, no. It's not just spirit power, there's other types of energy. Especially the density of the primal chaos chi, it's really frightening. My god, so it's a perfect Tianluo raccoon. Where on earth does the guest in room 1 come from? How can he have such a divine item? The energy in this hair is too strong, far greater than that of the skull that was just brought up. If I refine it, I might be able to attain immortality. Fill my body so that I never dry up. He himself never expected that a single strand of hair he had enchanted would actually be blown away like this. The error-free chapters of the daily life of the Immortal King will continue to be updated on the new Sea Pavilion of Books. There are no advertisements on the site, so please collect and recommend the new Sea Pavilion of Books. If you like the daily life of the Immortal King, please collect. The daily life of the Immortal King is updated the fastest in the new Sea Pavilion of Books. Chapter 1867. It was just a hair of a mythological beast, yet it could be sold for such a sky-high price. It was unprecedented in the entire history of the central auction house. No one would have thought that this mythological beast's hair would be so valuable. Although most people had never heard of this mythological beast's name and did not know where it came from, it was a fact that this strand of hair was emitting an astonishing energy. If he could refine it effectively, not only would he be able to refine pills and forge artifacts, he might even be able to comprehend the secret techniques of this divine beast from its fur. If I can comprehend the secret hidden in the hair, I will definitely be able to reach a higher level. Wang Ling was stupefied. These people were getting more and more ridiculous. This was just a strand of his hair. Wanting to comprehend a secret technique through this strand of hair was a bit too far-fetched. The person who got this strand of hair wouldn't be able to comprehend any secret techniques, they would just have a craving for crispy noodle snacks. Of course, Wang Ling had given this head this name for a deeper reason. How much he could sell it for wasn't that important to him, what was important was that he needed to test everyone's reactions with this made-up name. Those god tycoons who pretended to have heard of this divine beast's name were definitely not people from the war sect who had crossed over from the modern era. In the primordial era, there were no divine beasts called raccoons at all. Therefore, if one heard this name and did not join in the fun, they could be included in the list of suspects who were suspected of being possessed by the souls of the people of the war sect. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on King Tianquan, who was regarded as the representative of Great West Emperor. This person did not participate in the competition from the beginning. Not only did he not participate in the auction directly, but he also did not show much surprise on his face when he heard this strange name. In Wang Ling's opinion, King Tianquan instantly became very suspicious. He had reason to believe that there might be a little friend from Battle Sect hiding inside King Tianquan's body. However, if he was hiding inside, then his acting was too good. There was no way to find any flaws in his acting. Do you all feel this King Tianquan to be suspicious? Wang Ying asked. A little. Wang Zhen nodded. He wasn't directly involved, nor did he react strangely. Other than that, Madame Shanxiu from the Celestial Mountain sect was also very suspicious. The two of them had not made any big moves. He seems very calm. I agree with Brother Wang Zhen. I also feel that these two are a little strange, but I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. Lotus Sun also joined in the discussion. She frowned slightly. Her intuition told her that things weren't as simple as they seemed. While everyone on Wang Ling's side was secretly speculating, King Tianquan, who had remained calm all this time, suddenly stood up unexpectedly. 3 million Chaos Spirit Stones, I'll take it. The moment he opened his mouth, he offered 3 million. It was a price that crushed the entire audience. No one expected that the extremely powerful King Tianquan in the West would choose to make a move at this time. Wang Ling had thought that given King Tianquan's level of influence, as long as he made a move, there probably wouldn't be many people who would dare compete for him for fear of offending him. If it was an ordinary auction house, it would definitely develop according to the above trend. However, it was different here. Just as King Tianquan had said at the beginning, those who could enter the central auction house all possessed extraordinary identities. Now that King Tianquan was directly participating in the auction, more people became interested in Wang Ling's hair. Who was this person? King Tianquan. He was known as the representative and embodiment of the Great West Emperor. Even such a person was participating in the auction. Furthermore, the moment he opened his mouth, he offered a frighteningly high price, which proved the value of this hair. Sure enough, it's just as I guessed. This divine beast hair is extraordinary. Even King Tianquan has joined the competition. Everyone, King Tianquan is currently bidding 3 million Chaos Spirit Stones. Is there a higher bid? At that moment, the auctioneer, Lu Renwen, struck while the iron was hot with a small hammer and seized the opportunity. He used his words to goad more people into bidding high prices. This is a rare divine beast hair. Even if you don't know how to use it, as long as you keep it by your side, it can bring you good luck. After all, this divine beast is called a mascot. Lu Rinwen's words immediately caused the eyes of Wang Ling and the others in room 1 to light up. Lotus Sun, seniors, he said, mascot. Did I hear that right? Zhang Zi snickered. You didn't hear wrong, Miss Rong. I heard it too. This Lu Rinwen has probably already guessed our identities, so he's probably one of us. Wang Ying nodded and agreed with Zhang Zi's suggestion. He's checking the code with us. After all, not many people know this code name, so it can only be one of us. It's just that we don't know who on earth is living in this Lu Rinwen's body. Wang Zhen, let's wait a few more rounds. There's bound to be a time when he reveals his special characteristics. While they were discussing, Madame Shan Xiu, the leader of Immortal Mountain sect who had been silent all this time, also spoke up at that moment and joined the bidding. Madame Shan Xiu, I bid 5 million Chaos Spirit Stones and an original copy of the 9-star Melody Array. The 9-star Melody Array was a divine-grade array from ancient times, and was ranked above Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. According to the standards of the modern cultivation world, this formation was at least at the 11th level. The most important thing was that Madame Shan Xiu had taken out the original copy of the array, which was the only original copy and had even more collectible value. This was a direct exchange of valuable items, which was also within the scope of the central auction house's permission. Madame Shan Xiu's participation made the people at the scene even more excited. Now that everyone knew that this divine beast's fur was a good thing, they didn't want to miss it. I bid 6 million Chaos Spirit Stones and 20 bottles of Missing You liquid. At that moment, a young man with slick back hair spoke up. He was the owner of a famous sex toy store from ancient times. The Missing You liquid was the treasure of the store that he had personally developed. The advertising slogan was simple and crude, treasure, I'm getting an infusion. What liquid? Missing Unite. Although it was once called a greasy joke, the effect was indeed genuine. As long as it was sprayed on the body, it would automatically attract true love. Only true love would not dislike this greasy and be willing to approach it. This potion is very famous. It's the key to finding a Tao partner. It's expensive to manufacture. Of course, there are also people who are spurned during the effect period after applying it, but they usually have to find the reason from themselves. If you can't get a wife after applying it, it means that there's no true love in this world, Zhang Zi snickered. As more and more people participated in the bidding, the auction house became even more heated. In the end, no one mentioned the Chaos Spirit Stones anymore. They all used their treasures to exchange. I bid 2 divine-grade spiritual techniques and a divine-grade cultivation technique. I can use the complete ancient dragon remains to exchange. Hee, none of you can do it. I bid 100 kilograms of Kushuan's moral integrity. Chapter 1868. 100 kilograms of Ku Xian's moral integrity. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone in the audience went wild. Everyone knew that this thing was worthless to those who weren't interested in it. After all, Ku Xian's moral integrity had already been shattered a long time ago, falling to the ground one by one. No one paid attention to the previous bid of this person who also didn't have moral integrity. They continued to use their unique heavenly treasures to participate in the auction. I have a clear sky ruler. I've decided to use it to exchange. At that moment, a young man's voice came from VIP room 3. His voice wasn't very loud, but it was deafening to the ears. The crowd was in an uproar. This clear sky ruler was an immortal treasure of the Southern Region Imperial Palace. It contained the life force of the Southern Region Imperial Palace and was also a prize that the Southern Region Imperial Palace had provided 100 years ago. I remember that the year we had the clear sky ruler, the winner was an itinerant cultivator called Broken Sword. Who is this person? Broken Sword. But I feel like he's younger than Broken Sword. Could he be Broken Sword's son? Many people started to discuss the identity of this young man. Broken Sword doesn't have a son. You don't have to guess anymore. I know this guest. This young man is called Tang Moyuan, the descendant of the famous refiner Tang Root No. 9. So it's him, everyone understood. Tang Zhen's nickname was 9, and he was also a famous blacksmith. He was extremely famous since ancient times. Although they didn't know why this clear sky ruler fell into Tang Moyuan's hands, Tang Root No. 9 was a very righteous person. Since it was in his son's hands, he must have made some sort of deal with Broken Sword back then. However, no one expected to use the clear sky ruler to exchange for this divine beast's fur. The value of this clear sky ruler was at least 20 million chaos spirit stones. It had already crushed everyone else's bid. However, at this moment, King Tianquan made a bid again. No one knew if it was because of his superiors, but he wasn't willing to give up. I bid 30 million chaos spirit stones. I'll add another chaos spirit stone. The moment he spoke, the crowd fell into a dead silence. This was something the Great West Emperor had plundered from the eastern region's imperial palace. He had wanted to participate in this auction, but he hadn't expected King Tianquan to take it out for an exchange. In fact, King Tianquan had his own considerations for this decision. He had come to the central auction house because of the notice letter that Zhang Zizi had stolen. If they waited for the Chaos Immortal Stone to be auctioned, it would take a long time, and there would be all sorts of unstable factors. But now, if you were to exchange it as the product of the transaction, once the transaction was completed, then the Chaotic Immortal Stone would have nothing to do with him. Neither he nor the Great West Emperor would suffer any loss of face. After all, Zhang Zipei said in the notice letter that he would steal the mixed immortal stones during the auction. Now that he was not playing according to the rules, Zhang Zipei might lose his footing because of this. Of course, King Tianquan did not come up with this idea on his own. Instead, it was the opinion of the two snake girl attendants beside him. You've done well. When we return, I will take good care of you. King Tianquan was very satisfied with this suggestion. 30 million chaotic immortal stones and a mixed immortal stone that was also worth 30 million, this could already be called a sky-high price. Wang Ling was stupefied. He had never expected his hair to be so valuable. Thinking back to all the hair he had trimmed in the barbershop all those years ago, it was practically gold. Furthermore, it was even more valuable than gold. What should we do? He's just changing his tactic. If the transaction is completed and Senior Zhang steals the chaotic immortal stone, it will have nothing to do with him at all. That's easy. We just need to go easy on him during the transaction. At that moment, Zhang Zipei, who was playing the role of Li Ren, laughed sinisterly. Now, he completely remembered what had happened back then. Go easy. Lotus Sun was puzzled and looked a little doubtful. Just then, Zhang Zipei, who was playing the role of Li Ren, suddenly focused his gaze on an empty spot. You're there, right, Zhang Zipei? There was nothing there, and at first glance, Zhang Zipei, who was playing the role of Li Ren, seemed to be talking to the air. Don't be nervous, we have no intention of exposing you. Zhang Zipei, who was playing the role of Li Ren, snickered. No matter how you deceive other people, you can't fool me. After a while, an unfamiliar man's voice came from the private room. This voice belonged to the young Zhang Zipei. He had been hiding somewhere else, but because of King Tianquan's sudden change of tactics, he had no choice but to move to the private room Wang Ling was in. Because once the transaction was completed, the chaotic immortal stone would be sent directly to the room under the arrangement of the auction house. Who are you? Young Zhang Zipei hadn't expected to be exposed, and was very nervous for a moment. You don't need to know who I am. I just want to tell you that we won't be making a move later. You can directly attack them when they walk down the aisle with the chaotic immortal stone. Don't have any misgivings, Zhang Zipei, who was playing the role of Li Ren, said. Zhang Zi, who was playing the role of Li Ren, snickered. He had arranged everything clearly for his younger self. Why are you helping me? Young Zhang Zipei frowned in confusion. An enemy of an enemy. We are friends. King Tianquan is the representative of Great West Emperor, and we are his enemies. After a long silence, young Zhang Zipei didn't respond. He was very cautious as he pondered whether this was a trap or not. But at that moment, Zhang Zipei, who was playing the role of Li Ren, couldn't help taking a deep breath and saying, "You have to believe me, because I know your secret." Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and Wang Zhen were all stunned by this, and all of them looked like they were watching a show. So this was the segment where they had to reveal their dirty laundry. Wang Ling felt that he was going a little overboard in order to convince young Zhang Zipei to cooperate. What do you know? Young Zhang Zipei looked very nervous. I know your fetish for women. Old Zhang Zipei said, if you don't believe me, I can tell you directly. Don't. I believe you. Young Zhang Zipei broke out in a cold sweat. This had really hit his soft spot. If this person really knew something and said it, this would be a large-scale social death scene. After a few more minutes, King Tianquan finally bought Wang Ling's hair for the astronomical price of 30 million chaotic spirit stones and 1 chaotic immortal stone. But what no one expected was that while the central auction house was transporting the storage bag containing the 30 million chaotic spirit stones and the chaotic immortal stone, something unexpected happened in the end. In order to ensure the absolute safety of the transaction, the auction house had specially chosen 2 experts and Lu Renwen to personally deliver the items. However, when the items arrived at the door of Wang Ling's private room, but when the items were delivered to Wang Ling's private room, the whole central auction house was suddenly filled with snow-white smoke. This smoke quickly spread throughout the entire auction room. Young Zhang Zipei was waiting for an opportunity to make a move, but what he didn't expect was that Lu Renwen's reaction was also very quick. He did his utmost to protect his auction item, and didn't give young Zhang Zipei the slightest chance to do so. He's still a little green. Old Zhang Zipei smiled slightly at that moment and just waved his sleeve. The chaotic immortal stone that Lu Renwen was guarding appeared in his palm like magic. Then, taking advantage of the chaos, he directly stuffed the chaotic immortal stone into young Zhang Zipei's hand. Leave the rest to me, run. Chapter 1869. The chaos only lasted for a moment before it quickly returned to normal. The mixed immortal stone was stolen by the young Zhang Zi from the ancient times, and after he succeeded, he immediately retreated, not leaving a single cloud behind. In a trance, old Zhang Zizi suddenly recalled this legendary experience that spanned across the ages. At that time, he had indeed received the help of a senior. But old Zhang Zizi didn't expect that the senior who had helped him was actually himself. Zhang Zizi. Don't let me catch you. King Tianquan slammed the armrest of his chair, breaking it. He was flustered and exasperated. He didn't expect that Zhang Zizi would be able to get away with his trick. This was a slap to his face. And slapping his face was actually slapping the Great Western Emperor's face. What a shameless thief. With the immortal stone stolen, the transaction for the divine beast's fur fell into a stalemate. King Tianquan had lost face, but the central auction house couldn't shirk its responsibility. After all, the escorts for the transaction were all sent by the central auction house. On one side was the mysterious and extravagant guest in room 1. On the other side was the representative of the Great Western Emperor, King Tianquan, who was sitting in room 9. The central auction house didn't dare to offend either side. Thus, after the manager, Chen Yanan, asked for instructions from the higher-ups. The manager's son, the auctioneer, Lu Renwen, stepped forward to mediate. This time, our auction house made a huge mistake. Don't worry, King Tiankuan. Since you've already bid for the divine beast's fur, it counts. As for the immortal stone, our auction house will use other treasures to make up for it. We will definitely satisfy you and the guest in room 1, Lu Renwen said respectfully. I'm fine with it. I just want the divine beast's fur. As for what you do with it, it's none of my business. King Tiankuan snorted. His immortal stone had been brazenly stolen by Zhang Zizi, which made him feel indignant. On the other side, after Lu Renwen comforted King Tiankuan, he quickly went to room 1 with Qin Yanin. Everyone, I'm very sorry. This is our auction house's mistake, which led to the accident during the transaction. I'm sorry for the shock. The two cupped their hands. Qin Yanin's face was shrouded in dark clouds, and the sadness she showed made people feel sorry for her. However, when she raised her head, she inadvertently saw the group of people in front of her smiling at her. She was astonished. He was even more curious about the background of the guests in room 1. He must have seen a lot of the world. Even if he wasn't a disciple of a famous sect, he was at least a member of the imperial family. He was too calm. Not only was he calm, but he was also looking at her with a smile. Just how big was his heart? This made Qin Yanin respect Wang Ling and the others even more, and she didn't dare slight them in the slightest. My apologies for startling all of you. We've already issued an Eternal Sea warrant for Zhang Zistiel's arrest in the entire universe. I will definitely avenge all of you. Qin Yanin said. As for the previous transaction, although there are 30 million Chaos Spirit Stones, I'm missing the Chaos Immortal Stones. I wonder if we can compensate you in other ways. King Tiankuan is determined to obtain that divine beast hair. That's easy. The East Great Emperor nodded and smiled. Inside his body, Wang Ying transmitted Wang Ling's instructions to him. For King Tiankuan, this was a priceless divine beast hair, but for Wang Ling, it was just his own hair. In his eyes, it wasn't worth much to begin with. As for the Chaos Immortal Stone, it was an object from the East Great Emperor's imperial palace to begin with. The East Great Emperor had collected this stone for a long time and was already tired of it. He wouldn't feel bad even if he lost it. On the contrary, he could now exchange it for something new to play with through this transaction. For the East Great Emperor, this was exactly what he wanted. That Chaos Immortal Stone is valued at around 30 million Chaos Spirit Stones. What do you want to exchange for it? Zhang Zistiel said, My lord has taken a fancy to that divine beast skull with a long name. That's easy, Lu Renwen said directly. I'll take responsibility for this divine beast skull and give it to my lord. As for the remaining 30 million, we'll calculate it separately. Now, we have two options. The first is for our bank to directly convert 30 million Chaos Spirit Stones into compensation. The second option is that in the following auction, if my lord takes a fancy to anything, he can choose anything as compensation. No matter what the final price is, our bank will bear it. The East Great Emperor waved his hand and directly made his choice without hesitation. Then let's go with the second option. That's good. Lu Renwen and Qin Yanin bowed and quickly retreated. For the East Great Emperor, Chaos Spirit Stones were just trivial money. Besides, Zhang Zistiel had stolen a lot of them previously, so they didn't lack these things at all. It would be too boring to ask for money directly. He knew that King Tiankuan also had something that he had to obtain in this auction, and with this promise from the Buyers Guild, he would be able to compete with King Tiankuan without any effort. Previously, King Tiankuan had tried to humiliate him by auctioning off the East Great Emperor's stone that he had stolen from the imperial palace. As the emperor of a territory, he naturally had to get back at him. Very quickly, order was restored at the scene. The storm quickly subsided, and the guests on both sides were very satisfied with the outcome. There was really nothing better than this. Whether it was Room 1 or King Tinkuan's Room 9, the central auction house couldn't afford to provoke them. Unless the president personally took charge, there was no way to suppress them. As the president's son, it was rare for Lu Renwen to manage such a grand auction under the backdrop of the four emperors gathering. To be honest, he was a little flustered. Although he had already inherited the memories of Lu Renwen, and could just follow his experience step by step, he was still worried that something might go wrong. Thus, he could only rely on his intuition. Fortunately, his luck had always been pretty good. Although there had been an accident just now, it had been handled very well. And most importantly, it was because of that accident that he had recognized who the guest in Room 1 was. He had deliberately left a loophole and let Zhang Zistiel steal the Chaos Spirit Stone. His goal had been to personally go upstairs and have direct contact with the guest in Room 1. Using his intuition as the only Koi in the cultivation world, Qin Zong, who was now playing the role of Lu Renwen, had already made a basic judgment about Room 1. The people in Room 1 were all his people who had transmigrated from the modern world. And Li Ren had to be Zhang Zistiel. It was just that Qin Zong had no idea who Wang Ling was playing. I can only take it one step at a time. He sighed in his heart. Then, he signaled with his eyes for Qin Yanan to bring out the next auction item. It was a sky-reaching praying mat. According to the data, it was something that Dao ancestor Wang had used. Chapter 1870. Generally speaking, prayer mats in the cultivation world were used for meditation, seclusion, preaching, and cultivation. A comfortable prayer mat could allow a cultivator to quickly enter a state of selflessness and be unable to extricate themselves from cultivation. Wang Ling also had such a prayer mat in his king's treasure pants, which was called the commandment prayer mat. The efficiency of meditating on it for a day was comparable to 50 years of seclusion cultivation for a regular cultivator. But for Wang Ling, this praying mat was of little value. After all, he gained experience by sleeping every day. He already couldn't restrain himself, speeding up his cultivation would be no different from courting death. According to Wang Ling's eye appraisal, the sky-reaching prayer mat in front of him was indeed a lot stronger than an ordinary prayer mat. Meditating on it for a day was comparable to 6 months of seclusion cultivation. Even if it wasn't as strong as Wang Ling's, at least the effect was genuine. Of course, Wang Ling was well aware that this sky-reaching prayer mat wasn't selling for its cultivation value. Of course, he was well aware that this sky-high praying mat wasn't being sold for its cultivation value. Of course, Wang Ling was well aware that this sky-reaching prayer mat wasn't selling for its cultivation value. As the founder of Heavenly Dao and a top expert in the eternal cultivation world, Dao ancestor Wang's name was above the four emperors. He was an existence that everyone worshipped and revered. At the very least, before Dao ancestor Wang had locked the immortals in the Supreme Corpse shroud painting, his reputation in the eternal cultivation world had been resounding. Even in the great emperor's imperial palace, there was a special ancestral hall dedicated to Dao ancestor Wang. Every day, people worshipped him with incense as if he were a god. It could be said that most of the immortals were Dao ancestor Wang's believers. Or to put it more bluntly, in the modern cultivation world, they could also be called fans. But what Wang Ling hadn't expected was that the fan economy, which had already developed to a certain scale, had already been popular since ancient times. Sure enough, everything in the world was a circle. You might think you were playing some new tricks, but in fact, it could be something left behind by the ancestors. To be honest, if it wasn't for the following contents of the diary, East Great Emperor wouldn't have gotten this prayer mat. Wang Ling felt that he might buy this praying mat. He wasn't a fan of Dao ancestor Wang, but he was interested in him. Even though the East Great Emperor claimed that it didn't seem like Dao ancestor Wang's doing in the scheme of the eternal transmigration, but Wang Ling still felt that this was the number one suspect. Is this really what Dao ancestor Wang obtained? When they heard Lu Renwen introduce the information about the praying mat, many people became excited. It is indeed an item of Tao ancestor Wang. Qin Zong, who was impersonating Lu Renwen, said, according to the results of the appraisal, there is a statue of Tao ancestor Wang in the myriad spirit mountain of planet Zhongzhou. In reality, it was left behind by Tao ancestor Wang after he ascended to immortality a long time ago. After his mortal body was petrified, skilled craftsmen created it according to the petrification refinement. In order to identify whether the futon belongs to Tao ancestor Wang, the auctioneer specially made a trip to Thousand Spirit Mountain. According to this stone statue, he made a but model of Tao ancestor Wang. In the end, after a strict comparison with the indented mark on the praying mat, it was confirmed that this praying mat truly belongs to Tao ancestor Wang. Everyone fell silent. It was said that the appraisers of the central auction house were famous for putting their lives on the line in order to appraise the authenticity of treasures, but no one expected them to be this crazy, buttocks molded. Why did this sound so dirty? It was too sinful. Before coming to immemorial time, Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, and Wang Zhen had thought that the cultivators of immemorial time were a bunch of stubborn old fools. They never expected these former seniors of the cultivation world to be so good at this. They had learned something new. The starting price of this heavenly praying mat is 5 million spirit stones, and each bid must be no less than 500,000. Now, the auction officially begins. Lu Renwen dropped the hammer with a bang. After confirming that this was indeed an item of Tao ancestor Wang's, the bidding instantly began. I want it, 10 million spirit stones. Immediately, someone raised his hand and bid 10 million. Everyone was stunned by the look of someone who was determined to win the bid. Then, an even more intense bidding began. 15 million spirit stones. 20 million spirit stones. In fact, a single heavenly praying mat didn't cost that much at all. The most important thing was that it belonged to Tao ancestor Wang. Since it was something that Tao ancestor Wang had used, meditating and cultivating on it might be able to directly comprehend the heavenly Tao like Tao ancestor Wang. This belongs to Tao ancestor Wang. You don't want it. Zhang Zipei looked at East Great Emperor curiously. There are better ones later, no hurry. East Great Emperor shook his head. At that moment, Zhang Zipei also realized that even though the cultivators below were all fighting over it, none of the big clients in the private rooms upstairs made a sound. It wasn't just East Great Emperor, even Madame Shanxiu and that King Tianquan were silent, as if they were waiting for something. Thinking of what East Great Emperor had just said, Zhang Zipei guessed that East Great Emperor must have gotten some information about the auction in advance. Very quickly, this heavenly praying mat was bought by a young member of the royal family at the high price of 50 million spirit stones. Actually, it's not worth that much money at all. What a waste, what a waste. Wang Zhen was speechless. After all, the Wang family of the domain of the gods was one of the descendants of Tao ancestor Wang, and there were many things in the family that had been passed down by Tao ancestor Wang. Wang Zhen was speechless. If he could sell it here from the modern era, he would be as rich as a country. After this heavenly praying mat, the central auction house took out 3 more items in succession. One was the expert appraisal technique, one was the 9 dragons coffin pulling experience voucher, and one was the stretching leg staring pill. They were all top-notch treasures that were priceless. The cultivators downstairs were scrambling for them, but no one was fighting for them upstairs. There was not even the slightest movement. Until the next item appeared, it was a scroll. Even its name was very domineering. It was called the Book of 9 Realms. I don't think I need to introduce the Book of 9 Realms, right? Qin Zong, who was impersonating Lu Renwen, said. As he held the Book of 9 Realms in his hand, his heart trembled slightly because this thing's reputation had spread throughout the ages. It was an existence that everyone knew about. This was because this was Dao Ancestor Wang's orthodoxy certificate, which contained Dao Ancestor Wang's personal signature. Dao Ancestor Wang had said that no matter who obtained it, as long as they could open the Book of Nine Realms and understand the words written inside, they could become his true disciple. All these years, the Book of Nine Realms had spread far and wide in the eternal cultivation world, and some unscrupulous merchants even made a fortune by selling fake goods. That was because it was said that those who obtained the original copy of the Book of Nine Realms would see nothing in it. To this day, no one had been able to become Dao Ancestor Wang's disciple. But now that the central auction house had the guarantee of such a big shop, it could be confirmed that this Book of Nine Realms was authentic. Based on the information in the diary, he knew that this scroll was what East Great Emperor was going to bid on next. But at the same time, he was very puzzled. Because he now knew who Dao Ancestor Wang's true disciple was. That was to say, after East Great Emperor obtained the Book of Nine Realms, something else had happened, and in the end, Ping Shiren had picked up the bargain, 100 million spirit stones. Sure enough, someone immediately spoke. It was King Tianquan's voice. He didn't listen to Lu Renwen's bid or reserve price at all, and bid 100 million, which horrified everyone present. East Great Emperor wasn't polite at all. 200 million spirit stones. He didn't give in at all, and looked like he was going to fight it out with King Tianquan. Set a small target first, such as 1 second. Remember, bookseller's house. Chapter 1871. The original copy of the Book of the Nine Schools, the so-called only threshold for Dao Ancestor Wang to recruit true disciples, which had been pursued by cultivators throughout the cultivation world since ancient times, had now appeared in the central auction house. To be able to get his hands on such an item, it was enough to prove that the president of this auction house wasn't an ordinary person. Wang Ling was deeply curious about this. There were so many auction houses in the Central Territory Galaxy, but only the Central Auction House stood tall and was favored by the dignitaries of the 4 territories. The fact that the 4 emperors could directly auction things from their imperial palaces here showed just how powerful they were. Who is this president? Can we see him? Wang Ying asked. This was a question she was asking on Wang Ling's behalf. But at the same time, Wang Ying was also very curious. Moreover, they shared the same view: the president of this central auction house wasn't an ordinary person. If he was strong enough, he might even be suspected of orchestrating this ancient transmigration drama. After careful consideration, Wang Ling felt that this president was the most suspicious. As the president of the central auction house, not only did this person know about the 4 emperors since ancient times, he also had a certain status in the 4 territories. Most importantly, he also had all kinds of rare treasures that he had obtained through odd channels. This kind of person was definitely strong, and from what Wang Ling knew so far, this person was used to operating behind the scenes. This was also in line with the style of the person behind the diary. I've only seen the president once. When I suddenly looked back, he was in the shadow of the lamp. East Great Emperor suddenly sighed with emotion in the team voice spell. You didn't see his face? No, East Great Emperor said. The Great East Emperor said, however, through that blurry facial outline, this Lu Renwen does look very similar to him. He should be his biological son without a doubt. Wang Ling was speechless. He just wanted to know who this president was and more detailed information on him. He hadn't asked if he was a cuckold or not. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He felt that East Great Emperor's answer was probably all he knew about the situation. Even East Great Emperor wasn't clear about the president's identity, let alone other people. At this point, Wang Ling fell into deep thought. At that moment, the bidding had already reached the sky-high price of 500 million spirit stones. King Tianquan's lips twitched as he raised the price, trying to use this price to intimidate all his competitors. However, he underestimated how fanatical cultivators were about the Book of Nine Realms. Especially in the central auction house. Those who were seated here were all nobles. Faced with such an object, it was impossible for them to give up so easily. Even those who weren't seated in the VIP suites felt the same way. They were all royalty of their respective domains, and while their status might not be as high as King Tianquan's, they still wanted to fight for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Hence, in less than 10 minutes, the Book of Nine Realms had been raised to a heaven-defying price of 700 million chaotic spirit stones. Lu Renwen, who played Qin Zong, wiped his sweat. In fact, he knew very well that as long as the guest from Room 1 continued to participate in the auction, the Book of the Nine Realms would definitely fall into the hands of the guest from Room 1. After all, they had made a one-sided promise before. What if the guest in Room 1 doesn't give up and sends it out? Is it really okay? Chen Yanan asked worriedly. While the two of them were auctioning, they were also secretly communicating via voice transmission. Integrity first. Lu Renwen replied, since it's something I promised, I'll naturally do it. Besides, we didn't lose too much. Although it took some effort to get this Book of the Nine Realms, it actually didn't cost too many resources to purchase. Chen Yanan asked, how much did it cost to get it? Qin Zong replied truthfully, including the travel expenses and the cost of exploration and excavation, it was about 200,000 chaotic spirit stones. Chen Yanan was shocked. So cheap. Qin Zong, father, had special channels, so he got it. It was found in the tomb of a cultivator who failed to break through to the progenitor realm. Chen Yanan, why was it in the tomb? Qin Zong, for something like this, the person who gets it will definitely have selfish motives. Since he can't become Dao Ancestor Wang's disciple, he naturally doesn't want others to become Dao Ancestor Wang's disciple. But the Book of the Nine Realms is made of special materials and cannot be destroyed, so the original owner of the Book of the Nine Realms would naturally choose to take it into the tomb and let it be sealed underground forever. Chen Yanan, then how did the president know? Qin Zong shrugged. I'm not sure. You know, I've never met father in my entire life. We basically communicate through communication talismans. Chen Yanan, at this moment, King Tianquan, who was in the VIP room, finally couldn't sit still anymore. He directly kicked open the door of the VIP room, no longer able to maintain his composure. 1 billion chaotic spirit stones. He shouted loudly. This time, it really shocked many people here. Everyone sighed. After all, this was King Tianquan, the representative of the Great West Emperor. Even though they were nobles, in terms of foundation, they were still inferior to King Tianquan. Many people were helpless. Although they were extremely eager to get this Book of the Nine Realms, they could only give up in the end. According to the rules of the central auction house, if one randomly bid and caused trouble, and if one didn't have enough money to complete the transaction, one would be permanently blacklisted. With such a punishment system in place, even though many people here were dissatisfied with King Tianquan's arrogant and indulgent attitude, they had no choice but to give up bidding. But there were still people who didn't give up. After many people knew that they couldn't get the Book of the Nine Realms, they naturally turned their attention to the person in Room 1 who was competing with King Tianquan, and the Immortal Mountain sect leader, Madame Shan Shou. 1 billion chaotic spirit stones, even King Tianquan felt his heart ache. However, he had no choice but to fork out this money. This was because he believed that he had the potential to become Dao Ancestor Wang's true disciple. Friend in Room 1, as the saying goes, a gentleman doesn't snatch what others love. This Book of the Nine Realms is something that I must get. I hope that you can let me have it, King Tianquan said. His tone was fierce, but it was hard to tell whether it was a request or a threat. The Great East Emperor was silent for a moment. Then, King Tianquan said again, how about this? You withdraw from the auction and give it to me. After I take a look, if I confirm that I have no fate with Dao Ancestor Wang, I can sell the Book of the Nine Realms to you. Of course, you don't need to spend my 1 billion chaotic spirit stones. You only need to pay 800 million. What do you think? King Tianquan made a solemn vow. His words caused everyone to sigh with emotion. Such a proposal sounded like a veteran. In this day and age, everyone felt that they had the potential to become Dao Ancestor Wang's true disciple. Since that was the case, how could they easily give up the Book of the Nine Realms when they had the capital to support them? King Tianquan's proposal was full of schemes. If he directly became a true disciple, he would turn the entire eternal world upside down. He might even inherit the throne of the new great emperor. However, if he didn't succeed, he could just sell the Book of the Nine Realms. It wouldn't be a big loss for him. What a shrewd man. However, King Tianquan's wishful thinking was wrong. The Great East Emperor still chose to increase the price. 1 billion chaotic spirit stones. King Tianquan's mouth twitched. No need for 800 million. You can just pay half of the final transaction price. The Great East Emperor didn't listen to his nonsense. 3 billion chaotic spirit stones. King Tianquan, how about this? Let me have a look first. If nothing happens after I read it, I will give it to you directly. The Great East Emperor thought for a moment and continued to bid. 4 billion chaotic spirit stones. King Tianquan, don't go too far. The Great East Emperor, 5 billion chaotic spirit stones. King Tianquan, good boy. Just you wait for this king. The Great East Emperor, 6 billion chaotic spirit stones. King Tianquan, at this point, everyone in the auction house, including King Tianquan, fell silent. King Tianquan didn't even increase the price. The Great East Emperor increased the price by 100 million chaotic spirit stones every time he spoke. He didn't dare to open his mouth. Even King Tianquan had never seen such a rich and overbearing method. In the end, the Book of the Nine Realms successfully became the Great East Emperor's possession. King Tianquan had never suffered such grievances before. He was so angry that his body was trembling. At this time, the two lamias standing beside him were also whispering into his ears, urging him on. Snake Woman number 1 said flirtatiously, King Tianquan, there's no need to be angry. We can just snatch it from him later. Snake Woman number 2 echoed, yes, King Tianquan, money doesn't necessarily mean strength. We can just go up and fight him head on. We can't lose this momentum. After being shocked by the two snake women, King Tianquan, who was already dizzy with anger, couldn't care so much anymore. Killing intent rose in his heart. He wanted to kill every single person in room 1. Chapter 1872. With the Book of Nine Realms in hand, East Great Emperor's biggest task had been accomplished, and he was ready to leave before the auction was over. As for the deposit he had paid earlier, East Great Emperor had left an address, and the central auction house would send someone to deliver it. As the largest auction house in the Central Territories trading galaxy, no one would doubt its credibility. Friend from room 1, please wait. Just as he arrived at the entrance of the auction house, someone quickly caught up with him. Wang Ling recognized this person. He was the young man next to Madame Shan Xiu, the head of Immortal Mountain Sect, who had participated in the auction with her. He had red lips, white teeth, delicate features, and a good temperament. Judging from his overall strength, he should be a core disciple of Immortal Mountain Sect. I'm Mei Yunhai, a core disciple of Madame Shan Xiu, the young man said. Madame would like to invite you to the temple for a chat. Would you do her the honor? I'll have to ask if she wants to invite all of us or just my master. Zhang Zi snickered. Well, everyone, of course. Of course, she wants to talk to this gentleman. Mei Yunhai was speechless for a moment, but he reacted quickly. He immediately bowed and looked in Wang Ling's direction. Why does Madame Shanxiu want to talk to my master? You'll know when you get there. This is related to the Book of Nine Realms. Consider it a reminder from Madame. Mei Yunhai didn't say it directly. If it had been an ordinary person, East Great Emperor would have left without turning back. But this time, the person who called him was the famous head of Immortal Mountain Sect, and he might really hear something interesting. There was still some time before the Four Emperors' assembly, so East Great Emperor thought it would be fine to go and relieve his boredom. Of course, the operation here had already been written down in the diary. After agreeing to Mei Yunhai's request, East Great Emperor immediately rushed toward the temple. In ancient times, almost all the major cities in the four regions and the Central Territory had temples. They were places for offering incense, and if one was devout, one might receive immortal blessings. But Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were extremely unfamiliar with this kind of ancient culture that the ancient ones were familiar with. Is a temple similar to a Buddhist hall? Lotus Sun asked. She felt that she had asked a stupid question. However, the East Great Deity's reply was very gentle. Similar, but not exactly the same. In the team voice technique, the East Great Emperor replied patiently, even cultivators need faith. The temple is a place to continue the faith of cultivators and allow like-minded cultivators to gather their faith. Then dare I ask, Senior, who are the people worshipped in the temple? Tao Ancestor Wang. Lotus Sun was curious. For the vast majority of cultivators, Tao Ancestor Wang is too illusory. He is an existence that they can only look at but cannot reach. The older generation of cultivators have feelings for Tao Ancestor Wang, but in the ancient times, the people these new generation of cultivators came in contact with the most were us. In other words, the Four Emperors. At this point, the East Great Emperor couldn't help but scratch the back of his head. Ha ha ha, it's a little embarrassing to say this. Actually, the ones worshipped in this temple are the four of us. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, and Wang Zhen were stupefied at the same time. Taoism worships the three pure ones, Buddhism worships Tathagata, but in ancient times, they worshipped the four emperors. If he went to the temple now, it meant that the great East Sovereign would worship himself. That was too shameful. That is to say, the temple worships the four of you at the same time. Then if your beliefs are different, will you directly start fighting? Wang Zhen couldn't help asking. You don't know this. At that moment, Zhangzi opened his mouth to explain on their behalf with the air of an elder. Only the central region's solar system is special, and the temple has statues of the four emperors. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, everyone worships their own. The region they live in depends on which emperor they worship. Of course, there are also the more moderate and steady faction that worships all four at home and doesn't offend anyone. As for the central region's temple, because the four regions jointly sent ancient city guards, even if they have different beliefs, they won't start fighting over them. What about the faces of the statues of the four emperors? Naturally DIY. Zhangzi replied, using a more modern term. Normal cultivators can't clearly see the faces of the four emperors when they are at full strength, so there have always been many versions of the true faces of the four emperors among the people. Naturally, the facial features that are used to carve the statues of the four emperors are the ones that are just right, the kind of facial features that are naturally dignified without being angry. So that was it. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun nodded inwardly. The matters of the eternal world and some unique folk cultures were uncommon in modern cultivation society, and were knowledge that couldn't be learned in textbooks. This piqued the interest of both of them. As for Wang Zhen, he knew a little more about the eternal world than Wang Ling and Lotus Sun, but that was just some things passed down by the elders, and a lot of things were hearsay. Now that he had taken this opportunity to come to the eternal world, it could be considered a supplementary lesson. The temple closest to the central auction house was 500 li away. Zhang Zi secretly hired a Pegasus carriage to take everyone there. Everyone sat in the carriage and sped through the sky. When they approached the divine temple, the body of the East Great Emperor began to emit the radiance of divinity. Colorful runes of 7 colors bloomed from his body like a lotus, dazzling and dazzling. There was no sound at all, but it gave off a terrible divine aura. Oh no! I forgot about this, the East Emperor muttered to himself. Something was wrong, and he quickly made a hand seal to force the spirit power that was involuntarily emitting back into his body. Why is it like this? Lotus Sun was completely stunned. Just now, it was as if rainbow bridges had been set up on the East Emperor's body, and his whole body seemed to be releasing fireworks, which was very beautiful. Because of the worship in the temple, someone is communicating with me, and that's why it's like this. This is a kind of spiritual response. It can be considered a response to their wishes. The East Emperor sighed. For example, when I'm communicating with you now, I hear a lot of wishes in my mind. They are all made by my believers. Are there any more excessive wishes? Wang Ying asked with a mischievous smile. The Immortal Ascension Assembly is coming up. Someone wants to get a good ranking. Immortal Ascension Assembly. This is an assembly held jointly by the royal families of the 4 territories, and its purpose is to select some independent cultivators who are scattered among the people. They can become a member of the royal family through this Immortal Ascension Assembly without any family or background, Zhang Zi said with a snicker. You can do that. Wang Ying was stunned. It's the result of one's own efforts, of course. If a male cultivator has good grades, he can choose to marry into the family. If he has the money, he can also marry openly. If a female cultivator has good grades, she can choose to marry a member of the royal family she likes and directly become the first wife. Zhang Zi said with a snicker, and once the marriage is completed, the child they give birth to will also be a member of the royal family. Don't you think that in modern times, the ancient ones with royal status are even stronger? The power of bloodline inheritance is very realistic. But I remember that in the past Immortal Ascension Assemblies, the royal families that were most favored by the top independent cultivators were the Clear Light sect of the East Domain and the Great sect of the North Domain. Yes, the leading independent cultivators in the Immortal Ascension Assembly have the right to choose all the royal families who participate. The number of people who chose these 2 royal families is also the highest. The East Great Emperor nodded. Wang Ying, that doesn't sound like a very excessive wish. The East Emperor, but they're only 3 years old. Everyone, Lotus Sun, then Senior, why don't you find someone to help you filter your wishes? East Great Emperor, the major temples do have a mechanism like the wish card, but can a wish written in the wish card be called a wish? On the card is written, I have no desires, but in my heart, I want them all. And it's very expensive to hire people. Every temple in the eternal world has to send someone to guard it. Where would this emperor get so much money? Lotus Sun, but Senior, don't you have a lot of believers? Don't they give money to those who make wishes? The East Emperor laughed. You don't really think that the money in the temple's wish box will reach my hands, do you, everyone? Chapter 1873. East Emperor's words were so true that for a moment, everyone was speechless and unable to say a word. Not to mention the eternal world, even the Buddhist disciples in the modern cultivation world didn't believe that the money in the merit box never belonged to Buddha. Monk Golden Lamp, as the most sacred Buddhist monk, should be well aware of this. But why had Madame Shanxiu, the leader of Immortal Mountain sect, asked them to meet at the temple? Was it because he was a believer of one of the 4 emperors, or was there a deeper meaning to this? Wang Ling furrowed his brow thoughtfully. He had a vague feeling that this Shanxiu wasn't simple, and might even be on the same side as them. Of course, this was just Wang Ling's own speculation. He had a hunch that their trip to the temple would be unusually lively. When the speeding carriage landed, Wang Ling saw an unusually mysterious and magnificent building. The ivory temple's walls were carved with all kinds of runes from ancient times, and the environment inside was very good, with small bridges, flowing water, rockery, and fountains. According to Zhang Zizi, the temple in the central region was built in a unique style that blended the styles of the four regions so that believers could devoutly worship the emperors they believed in. Compared with ordinary temples, the temple in the central region had 3 additional halls, which were located in the east, south, west, and north directions. All the halls were of the same standard, and even the building area was strictly required to be exactly the same. This was also done in order to appease the believers. After arriving here, East Emperor silently observed the surroundings of the temple. There were many believers here, incense burning, and an endless stream of cultivators making wishes. East Emperor knew that in addition to Madame Shan Xiu, someone else would come looking for him. King Tiankuan definitely wouldn't miss this opportunity. The ancient city guards might be terrifying, but they wouldn't be able to intimidate this king of the western region. If the other party really dared to make a move in the central region, and most importantly, this was a temple with a statue of West Emperor. If East Emperor chose to make a move here, he might be able to get a long-range boost from West Emperor. But East Emperor wasn't very worried, because he still had that senior surnamed Wang hidden in his body. This was the greatest killing weapon he could bring out now. Once he brought it out, it would be enough to crush everything. However, the 4 emperors' assembly had yet to officially begin, and the great East Emperor did not wish to reveal his identity so early. After all, no one had ever seen the great emperor's true appearance. They had to rely on their Dharma images to identify them. Therefore, if he really had to face King Tiankuan in the future, the East Great Thoarch did not intend to use his Dharma idol to fight. If he, a supreme emperor, had to use his Dharma power to deal with a mere royal highness, it would make him feel very embarrassed. As a great emperor, the East Great Emperor rarely came to a place like the Divine Temple. After all, he would feel strange if he paid homage to it himself. However, he had no choice but to pay a visit today because of the needs of history. In the huge Divine Temple, there were 4 orderly long lines in the courtyard. There were guards from the ancient city maintaining order here. Everyone stood in front of the palace of the great emperor they believed in, waiting devoutly to pay their respects. There was no chaos or noise. They sure are harmonious. I thought they would fight. Wang Ying teased. Zhang Zizi sighed and said, after all, with the protection of the ancient city, most people don't dare to mess around. Other than that, many people believe that if they cause trouble here, they will be punished by the 4 emperors, causing their cultivation to stagnate. Is there such a saying? Wang Ying was curious. Actually, there isn't. It's just a psychological effect. The East Great Emperor personally clarified. The 4 emperors seemed to have a lot of followers, but basically, only a small portion of these followers were die-hard fans. Most of them actually acted according to their hearts. If the wishes they made were fulfilled, they would only pay respects to one emperor for a period of time. If the wishes they made were not fulfilled, they would immediately turn to other great emperors and become their fans. Even in the primordial era, this was a very realistic matter. Although it seemed to be disrespectful to the great emperors, there were many followers. As great emperors, they were not so narrow-minded as to specifically target a particular follower. Pray for the East Great Emperor. Bless the descendants of the Qin family and let their wishes come true. Words are law. As soon as they stepped through the threshold of the gate of the Divine Temple, everyone immediately heard a voice coming from the East Great Emperor's palace. A bald middle-aged man with a large string of prayer beads around his neck was prostrating on the ground in an exaggerated posture, kowtowing devoutly. Although everyone's posture was different and there was no particular set of rules, this man's exaggerated posture still attracted a lot of attention. Look, it's this weird wish again. This great emperor hasn't even achieved words or law. How can he guarantee that the descendants of the Qin family will be able to do so? The East Great Emperor ridiculed in the team voice spell. Wang Ling was silent for a very long time. Because when it came to the Qin family, whose words or law were law, Wang Ling's first impression was of Super Qin. He wasn't sure whether this middle-aged man in front of him was related to Super Qin or not. After all, this was already a long time ago. If Super Qin really was a descendant of the Qin family, that would be too much of a coincidence. Wang Ling was cursing in his heart when immediately after this middle-aged man surnamed Qin, a stout woman started to kowtow to the East Great Emperor statue. Pray for the East Great Emperor. May the descendants of the Guo family have a wide network of people, have no worries about food or clothing, and be able to carry forward the spirit beast breeding business. This time, it wasn't just Wang Ling, even Lotus Sun was startled. Classmate Wang Ling, why do I feel that this senior sounds so much like Hero Guo? It can't be that coincidental, can it? Wang Zhen also felt that it was inconceivable. This was a long time ago. To be able to live from that period to the present day, how formidable was the power of the bloodline. Furthermore, the vast majority of the ancient ones had been imprisoned in the Supreme Corpse shroud painting by Dao ancestor Wang. Although it had already been ascertained that not all the ancient ones had been imprisoned inside, and that there was still a small number of them, and even those with royal blood, who were roaming outside, the probability of them surviving and leaving behind a fire seed was simply as low as dust. Wang Ling had never believed that there could be any coincidences in a situation where such a long time had passed, but he couldn't help but feel a little doubtful and suspicious of such a coincidence. In the current situation. Dad, let's go. What you're doing is useless. At that moment, a young man with a buzz cut ran over and helped the middle-aged man with the large prayer beads around his neck up. Ren, don't be rude, this is the great emperor. He will hear our voices. The middle-aged man surnamed Shin had a pious expression on his face. But your words are law, that's too unrealistic. Isn't it the same as having your wishes come true? Unless the East Great Emperor himself appears in this temple, I don't believe he will fulfill my wish. Chen Ren sighed. East Great Emperor, Wang Ling, everyone else. Chapter 1874. As soon as Chen Ren said this, Wang Ling had no choice but to perk up and take a closer look at this youngster. If one didn't look carefully, this ancient version of Super Qin didn't seem very different from Super Qin. He had an exquisite buzz cut, regular facial features, dark skin, and just the right amount of muscles, as if he was synonymous with Super Qin. If one had to point out the difference, it would be the scar on the bridge of his nose and the fact that he was slightly taller than Super Qin. Ancient cultivators used heavenly materials and earthly treasures far more intensely than modern cultivators. Modern cultivators used heavenly materials and earthly treasures to refine pills that already had the standardized process of scientific cultivation, but ancient cultivators were different. They still used a more primitive method to refine elixirs, which was to throw the natural treasures they had collected into the furnace, and then leave it to fate. If they succeeded, the medicinal effects would be far more intense than those of modern cultivators, so ancient cultivators who had survived were much stronger than modern cultivators in terms of realm growth and development. Modern cultivators paid more attention to safety. Elixirs of the same standard wouldn't have any negative effects on the body, and the rest would be to use money to accumulate resources for cultivation. According to Zhang Zipei, there had been many ancient cultivators who had killed themselves by taking elixirs to achieve breakthroughs, and the number of them added up was enough to circle the earth several times. Chen Ren, I knew you'd be here too. While Wang Ling was staring at Chen Ren absent-mindedly, a loud voice rang out in the distance. A huge figure walked out of a palace hall and arrived at the entrance of East Great Emperor's main hall. This person was fat and had short hair. After greeting Qin from afar, he helped up the chubby woman who was kowtowing on the ground like Qin. "Mother, it's useless for you to worship the emperor. I just don't want to cultivate. It's so nice to raise the spirit beast farm my family runs," the fat boy said. The chubby woman sighed. "I know you don't like cultivation, so I didn't pray in that direction with East Great Emperor. I only hope that you can have more friends and connections. That way, at least you will have friends to take care of you in the future and you won't be bullied. We know you love raising spirit beasts, but you still have to cultivate. After all, your realm affects your lifespan. Your father and I don't want to see you die young." The chubby woman earnestly instructed him. In a trance, Wang Ling felt that this was an ill-fated relationship that couldn't be described in words. Even if he didn't believe it, the similarity between these two people and Super Chen's and Hero Guo's attributes was too high. "Brother Guojia, I knew you'd come too." Like the modern cultivation world, these two had a very good relationship in the past, and Wang Ling felt as if he were a lifetime ago. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew that this was the ancient era, Wang Ling really would have thought that the people standing in front of him were Super Qin and Hero Guo themselves. "I can't help it, because a lot of friends have come to pay their respects." Guojia, and as he laughed. "As I say, I, Wang," he said, "Chen is to say, I, Ling is I, as I Ren and Ling, yes, we grew up together. It would be too fake if we were still so polite." Chen Ren laughed. The two of them put their arms around each other's shoulders and hugged each other. Wang, both, but as, the two, their, both, they, and to both their parents, and both, the parents, and both. Wang Ling actually wanted to get to know these two people, since he would be able to further determine whether they were related to Super Qin and Hero Guo in the future. But he was worried that he would disrupt the course of history if he probed them, so he resisted the urge. In the end, Wang Ling hadn't expected East Great Emperor to actually walk over on his own. "Wang Ying, do you know them?" East Great Emperor shook his head. "No, it's just that Senior seems to want to get to know them." Wang Ying, "Don't, it'll affect the course of history." East Great Emperor, "Small details don't matter, as long as the big picture doesn't change. For example, if there's a showdown between great emperors here later, it'll affect a lot of people. In that case, no matter what you do, it won't affect the course of history." Wang Ling, Wang Ying, Lotus Sun, and the others instantly fell into a deep silence at these words. Because they could hear the meaning in his words. In the course of history, if there was an irreversible disaster, it indeed wouldn't matter what you did before the disaster, because the disaster was unchangeable, and everything after the disaster would be destroyed. This suddenly gave Wang Ling some misgivings. Because he knew what had happened to all the ancient ones. Most of them had been locked up in the Supreme Corpse painting by Dao ancestor Wang in the end. If this point in time was a great disaster, then in theory, no matter what they did now, it didn't seem like it would change the course of history. But this was just Wang Ling's idea. At the moment, he wasn't particularly clear about the structure of the eternal world, so it was always right to play it safe. Furthermore, the fact that all the ancient ones had been locked up in the Supreme Corpse painting wasn't actually a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Since it was a man-made one, the probability of triggering it might not be 100%. So the answer Wang Ling pondered on this premise was that everything they were doing in the diary now might be a way to pave the way for Dao ancestor Wang to lock up the ancient ones in the Supreme Corpse painting. It was too complicated. At that moment, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. It wasn't easy to sort out all these things, so he could only take it one step at a time. "Brother, please wait, I think I've seen you somewhere before." Just as East Great Emperor was walking in the direction of the East Great Hall, Guojia's voice suddenly rang out, and he narrowed his eyes at him. "Oh." Is that so? East Great Emperor smiled very kindly and warmly. You look very familiar. And judging from the style of your clothes, you should be from the East Territory, right? Only people from the East Territory are equipped with vermilion bird plume ornaments. I see that the vermilion bird embroidery on your robe is very exquisite. Your identity must be unusual. Guijia frowned and guessed. You know a lot. East Great Emperor agreed. Yes, I heard it from my friends. I don't have much, just a lot of friends. Guijia smiled. Senior, please don't laugh. He's just like that, always acting familiar. At that moment, Chenren stepped forward and cupped his fists respectfully. You're a polite child. East Great Emperor nodded in satisfaction. Senior's bearing is extraordinary, and there are other seniors at your side, so you must be a member of the royal family from the East Territory. At that moment, Chenren also voiced his opinion. Also, you must be a fan of East Great Emperor. East Great Emperor. Why do you think so? Isn't Senior's attire paying tribute to East Great Emperor? Does Senior dare say that he is East Great Emperor himself? Chenren couldn't stop laughing. Even if he is, that's too weird. Who would come to pay their respects, don't you think? East Great Emperor, Lotus Sun, Wang Ling, everyone else, Wang Ling realized. Sure enough, the Qin family was very dangerous. It had been very dangerous since ancient times. Chapter 1875. There was no need for Wang Ling to say more about the danger Chenren was in. East Great Emperor could sense it. It turned out that there really were people like this in this world who could unintentionally reveal the truth. The point was that they didn't have much awareness of what they were saying. This was too frightening. In some sense, this kind of talent had already surpassed that of the royal family, which was amazing. They didn't rely on the power of their bloodline at all, and were simply crushed by their talent. When it came to bloodlines, this was what East Great Emperor found most amazing. Senior Wang. These two people, especially the one called Chenren, do you know all of their descendants? East Great Emperor asked weakly in the team voice communication technique. There are indeed two descendants who look very much like them, and even have the same surname. But at the moment, I can't tell if the two people I know are their descendants. After a moment of silence, Wang Ying finally answered truthfully. This amazed East Great Emperor even more, and he was utterly shocked. These two people in front of him couldn't even be considered members of the royal family. At most, they were nobles in a territory, the kind of rich people who didn't have to worry about food and clothing, but their cultivation talents were inferior to the royal family. If Guijia and Chenren really were the ancestors of Hero Gua and Super Qin, it could be said that the luck of these two clans was simply heaven-defying. They clearly weren't ancient beings with royal blood, but they were able to leave behind descendants who could transcend time and reach the modern cultivation world. What kind of terrible luck did this clan have? Even many members of the royal family didn't have this kind of luck. After all, Dao ancestor Wang had gone crazy and locked up all the ancient beings, the emperor, the royal family, the rogue cultivators and ordinary people among the ancient beings. In the same world in the painting, he hadn't let a single one of them off. As for the rest, probably only a few tenths of a percent of the population had survived, and it was definitely easier for those with royal blood to escape the devil's clutches. Since they were strong enough, they might have the means to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. Given that they weren't members of the royal family and didn't have enough strength, there were pitifully few ordinary people who could openly slip away. In Wang Ling's eyes, this probability of escaping was already no different from winning the lottery. All in all, this trip to the temple was a pleasant surprise for Wang Ling, and could also be considered a kind of scare. This feeling of meeting an old friend in a foreign land was incredibly magical. Then the question was, since Super Chen's and Hero Guo's ancestors had appeared, would he also run into his immemorial self? Initially, they had come to the temple to wait for Madame Shanxiu's appointment. He hadn't expected that instead of Madame Shanxiu, they would trigger some strange plot. "Brother, you look very familiar. Do you want to exchange a spiritual mark?" Guijia, who was already very familiar with him, asked. He took out a piece of jade with an expectant look. The eternal world did not have such modern equipment, let alone the internet. Cultivators still used primitive methods to communicate with each other, such as leaving spiritual energy imprints. Every cultivator had their own special spiritual energy, so as long as they left a spiritual energy imprint on each other, they could communicate directly through the jade in the future, which was equivalent to adding a contact person. Of course. The East Great Emperor smiled and directly took out his jade stone. Zhang Ziqin was horrified. This wasn't an ordinary spiritual energy imprint. Since it had been given by the East Great Emperor, it was naturally his imprint. The East Great Emperor had actually given something that so many people yearned for but couldn't get. This time, Wang Ling completely understood that this East Great Emperor was someone who liked to stir up trouble and didn't mind causing trouble. After Guijia's exchange, Chen Ren next to him also did the same. In this way, Guijia and Chen Ren could be considered to have made a new friend. So far, they didn't know the real background of this friend, and could only vaguely sense that he was a member of the Eastern Territories royal family. "It's embarrassing to ask for a spiritual energy mark on our first meeting. How about we treat you to a meal, senior?" Hero Guo said to East Great Emperor as he looked at Chen Ren, and the two of them smiled at each other. "I'm afraid not. I'm waiting for someone. He wants to talk to me," East Great Emperor replied. "Who?" Hero Guo was curious. "Mei Yunhai. Madame Shanxiu's direct disciple. Madame Shanxiu will also be here later," East Great Emperor said. "Oh. It's them." To East Great Emperor's surprise, this Guijia's network was broader than he had imagined, and he even knew Mei Yunhai and Madame Shanxiu. "You know them?" "More than that, I'm very familiar with them," Guijia said. "I met Mei Yunhai when we went to the secret land together. Of course, it was mainly him who took me along, and I provided spirit beasts for support along the way. All kinds of spirit beasts for transportation, spirit beasts to assist in attacks, and spirit beasts to store food and so on." Spirit beasts to store food, everyone blushed with shame when they heard this. So, he was so hungry that he directly ate spirit beasts as meat. That was too cruel. Guijia put his hands on his hips and said with the expression of a diviner, "And let me tell you, I even know why Mei Yunhai is looking for you. Shouldn't it be Madame Shanxiu looking for me?" "Why Mei Yunhai?" East Great Emperor asked. "Madame Shanxiu is just here to keep watch, and was afraid that Senior wouldn't agree." Guijia replied, "Senior, you should know that Mei Yunhai is Madame Shanxiu's only true disciple. But in fact, Mei Yunhai has a younger sister who isn't his biological sister. She and Mei Yunhai ran to become Madame Shanxiu's true disciple, but unfortunately, Madame Shanxiu didn't choose her." "Why are you telling my master this?" Zhang Zizi raised his eyebrows and asked. "I know that Senior is extraordinary, and is a member of the East Territories royal family. Since she is a member of the East Territories royal family, she must have a connection with East Great Emperor." Guijia said, "Senior, can't you see that Madame Shanxiu's main purpose for looking for you is to send Mei Yunhai's younger sister to the East Territories Imperial Palace to cultivate everyone?" Hearing this, Wang Ling suddenly felt like he had been cheated. What happened to discussing the secrets of the Book of Nine Realms? Why was it suddenly about finding a partner for East Great Emperor's harem? This woman, Zhang Zizi's lips trembled, and he was about to scream. At that moment, there was a commotion inside the temple. At the door, several familiar figures appeared, and because of their astonishing fame in the eternal world, they attracted the attention of the surrounding onlookers. It was Madame Shanxiu, who had come with her true disciple, Mei Yunhai, and a young girl who looked natural and unrestrained. She was wearing a long aqua blue dress with a white silk chiffon over it. The pearl belt around her waist was particularly eye-catching, and her silky black hair hung down to her waist. Her crescent eyebrows and starry eyes made her look very beautiful, snow-white skin. The girl's steps were light and full of confidence, which gave Wang Ling a very familiar feeling. Then, she walked up to East Great Emperor in 2 or 3 steps. Before Madame Shanxiu and Mei Yunhai could introduce themselves, she smiled and introduced herself. "Hello, Senior. My name is Sun Fu, Mei Yunhai's adopted sister. An inner sect disciple of Immortal Mountain Sect." When this sweet voice rang in their ears, Wang Ling was dumbfounded. Wang Ling was stupefied, and so was Lotus Sunday. Chapter 1876. These days, there were many members of the royal family who wanted to send their children to the imperial palace to gain experience. However, this was the first time that the East Emperor had seen someone who was obviously not very familiar with the imperial palace. After this incident, even the East Emperor himself was a little confused because he found that the current direction of the script had deviated a little from the track. And this was something that he did not write in his diary. However, the East Emperor still chose to deal with it calmly. As he said before, as long as the major events did not change, these trivial matters would not affect the real process of history. Over the years, he had also approved many new people to enter the imperial palace to cultivate. In the eyes of others, it was a big matter, but in the eyes of the East Emperor, it was really just a trivial matter. The East Emperor did not want to expose his identity, so he respectfully bowed to Madame Shanxiu in front of him. "Greetings, Madam. You don't have to be so polite, sir. It is not convenient to talk here. There is a spring orchid house next to the temple. I think it is more suitable to talk there." Madame Shanxiu narrowed her eyes and revealed a kind smile. The two faced each other and communicated through the team telepathy technique. "So, Madam, you led me here just to confirm whether I am related to the East Emperor?" The East Emperor laughed. "Indeed, there is a reason." Madame Shanxiu nodded slightly. The Central Region Temple worshipped 4 emperors at the same time. Under normal circumstances, after entering the temple, the believers would directly walk to the palace of the great emperor they believed in. Madame Shanxiu also probed the identity of the East Emperor. "Sorry, Madam, I can't help you with this matter." However, to Madame Shanxiu's surprise, the East Emperor politely bowed and quickly declined her invitation. "As far as I know, this year's Imperial Palace of the East Emperor has already been selected. Moreover, the East Emperor Palace has just experienced a war, and many of the palaces have been destroyed. It can be said that there are many things to do. So before it is completely restored, there will be no new plans to accept new people." He chose to directly refuse, and the reason was almost watertight, leaving Madame Shanxiu speechless for a while. From the East Great Emperor's point of view, a direct rejection was the best way to avoid any trouble. Moreover, it was impossible for him to leave under such circumstances. Because his purpose of coming to the temple was actually to wait for the flustered and exasperated King Tinkuan to appear. As for inquiring about the secret of the Book of 9 Realms, it was just a matter of convenience. It was just that the East Great Emperor did not expect that Madame Shanxiu would actually use this secret as bait to lure him to the temple to test him. Her actions had already caused the great East Emperor to be extremely dissatisfied. Thus, even without the aforementioned excuses, he would not have accepted this lady called Sun Fu. Although he had already rejected Madame Shanxiu's offer, the East Great Emperor still tried his best to speak to Sun Fu in a calm tone. "This young lady is extraordinarily talented. I think she will be in high demand wherever she goes. You don't have to choose the East Imperial Palace. Now that the East Imperial Palace is in chaos, perhaps it is better for you to find another path. The Great East Emperor wasn't being courteous when he said that he was extremely talented. Sun Fu's cultivation talent was indeed very good. At such a young age, she had already reached the divine transformation stage, which was very rare. If she could be cultivated with more resources, it would not be difficult for her to enter the ancestor realm in the future. Moreover, the East Great Emperor could see that Sun Fu had suffered a lot. Although she was young, she was a ruthless character. There was a faint aura of thunder on her body, which proved that she had just resisted the heavenly tribulation not long ago. Moreover, without the assistance of outsiders, she had resisted the heavenly tribulation with her own strength. This was not something that ordinary people could do with their courage. However, after listening to the East Great Emperor's words, Sun Fu's willowy eyebrows slightly furrowed. It was obvious that she was a little surprised by such a refusal. She was not chosen by Madame Shanxiu as a true disciple not because her talent was inferior to Mei Yunhai's. It was because Madame Shanxiu felt that with her talent, it would be a waste to stay in the Immortal Mountain sect. It would be better to be sent to the Imperial Palace with the other royal children to gain experience. She originally thought that an outstanding young lady like herself would not be rejected if she could find a way to enter the Imperial Palace. But the man in front of her didn't have the slightest interest in her at all. On one hand, he said that she was a fragrant cake that everyone would fight over, but on the other hand, he refused her invitation and told her to find another way out. Sun Fu felt that this was completely illogical. "Senior, are you testing my sincerity?" After thinking for a while, Sun Fu came up with an answer, and she said telepathically to the East Great Emperor, "I understand. It's not easy to join the Imperial Palace. If you're not careful, you might sneak into other big region spies." East Great Emperor, Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, "But Senior, please rest assured, I'm not that kind of person. I grew up without parents. It was Brother Yunhai who picked me up and brought me back to the Immortal Mountain sect to cultivate under Madame Shanxiu. Given Madame's reputation in the cultivation world, Senior should at least give me this little bit of trust, right?" Sun Fu bowed again and said respectfully, "No matter what Senior thinks of me, it is my wish to join the East Imperial Palace. I am only willing to join the East Imperial Palace. There are many things waiting to be done in the East Imperial Palace, and we need manpower. My daughter, Sun Fu, can definitely help." Hearing this, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were stunned. This time, they couldn't explain at all what was going on with this identical ability to fill in the blanks. This was simply a modern Lotus Sun's eternal replica. East Great Emperor sighed deeply when he heard this. He hadn't expected Sun Fu to be so determined. It would be very difficult to drive her away now. But as long as it didn't affect the overall situation, East Great Emperor thought that it wouldn't hurt to keep her here. Very quickly, East Great Emperor changed his mind. He looked at Madame Shanxiu, Mei Yunhai and Sun Fu and said, "How about this, Madam? This Miss Sun Fu can stay with me for the time being. I can also take her to the East Imperial Palace to see the Emperor for a recommendation. But I still have important matters to attend to in the Central Territory, so I won't make a move so quickly. During this period of time, if Miss Sun Fu can behave herself and not cause trouble for me, then I'm still willing to help her." Madame Shanxiu immediately beamed with joy. "Then I'll have to trouble you, sir. Of course, since you can help Fu, or lead the way, I will naturally be grateful to you. I believe that you are also very curious about the secret of the Book of Nine Realms." East Great Emperor's eyes lit up at this. He hadn't expected Madame Shanxiu to actually know something, and wasn't deceiving him. Just as he was about to ask, Madame Shanxiu, who was holding her walking stick, suddenly turned her ear as if she had sensed danger, and focused her attention somewhere in the air. Madame Shanxiu smiled. But it seems that I can only tell you about this after you've resolved the trouble in front of you. It was a powerful and awe-inspiring killing intent that swept across the sky with an insufferably mighty and domineering air. Old thief from room 1. How dare you steal this king's book of 9 realms? This king is coming for you. Before he arrived, his voice had already arrived. Then, this overwhelming pressure suddenly descended. With the entire temple as the center, the ground immediately shook violently. No one had expected this King Tianquan to be so overbearing as to directly seek revenge in front of the statues of the 4 emperors in this temple of the central region. Chapter 1877. On the central trade planet, King Tianquan was actually very powerful. Just his might alone caused black clouds to cover the sky above the temple. A mysterious power completely covered the entire sky above the temple, and not a single ray of light could penetrate through. As for the 2 snake women who followed him earlier, they were very far away, as if they were afraid that they would be implicated. Not only did they hide far away, but they also set up several layers of spiritual shields around themselves. They didn't participate in the battle, but just incited King Tianquan to attack from the rear. Go, King! Get rid of the villain in room 1. Take back the Book of 9 Realms. There's a statue of the Great West Emperor in the temple, and he's watching it. When Snake Woman number 2 heard this, she also egged him on. Your Highness, hurry up. These people are mediocre, and they definitely can't beat you. You've been on the battlefield for a long time, so how can you be afraid of them? King Tianquan sneered. He stood proudly in the void, full of vigor, as if he didn't care about the people below him. At this moment, the believers in the temple were either fleeing or scattering. King Tianquan watched them flee in all directions, and he didn't stop them. His target was very obvious. He was targeting the Great East Emperor's group. As for the other believers in the temple, they weren't his target, and he wasn't interested in them. However, this was the central trade planet, and very few people dared to directly attack here. As the Alliance army, the Central Galaxy's ancient city guards couldn't just stand by and watch. Immediately, dozens of guards appeared on the other side of the sky on their spiritual swords like meteors. When they saw that the person standing there was King Tianquan, the expressions on everyone's faces changed. This was the representative of the Great Western Emperor, and his battle prowess was extraordinary. Now that he had chosen to fight here, the guards of the ancient city instantly became very passive. King, this is not the place to attack. A captain of the ancient city guard stood up and talked to King Tianquan with a head full of cold sweat. He was under a lot of pressure, and his heart trembled. This King Tianquan was indeed the representative of the Great West Emperor, a big shot who had been on the battlefield for a long time. Just by standing in front of him, he could feel the terrifying pressure. Seeing King Tianquan remain silent, his Adam's apple involuntarily rolled, and then he said, "If King Tianquan can use the core world to fight, we will leave immediately." This was the ancient city guards' way of advancing by retreating. It was their duty to mediate the conflicts and wars in the Central Galaxy. However, the person they were facing was King Tianquan, an extremely troublesome character. The ancient city guards knew that they were powerless to stop him, so they could only take a step back and hope that King Tianquan could use his inner world to fight. However, King Tianquan couldn't care less about this. He didn't care about these ancient city guards at all. Then wouldn't my inner world be a mess? This king will fight here. Don't worry, I won't cause any trouble for you. This king knows his limits and won't cause too much damage to this place. When the guards of the ancient city heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other. They wanted to say something but hesitated. Even with King Tianquan's guarantee, most of them were still extremely hesitant. A battle between deity transformation realm experts was a weapon of destruction, let alone a progenitor like King Tianquan. If a progenitor went all out, then it wouldn't just be an apocalyptic battle. Instead, it would be a proper planetary war. It doesn't matter, everyone. Since King Tianquan wants to fight with me, I naturally have no reason to refuse. Don't worry, I won't let King Tianquan wreak havoc here. At this moment, the Great East Emperor smiled kindly and said, if it is damaged, with the divine elephant of the Great West Emperor here, you can ask the Great West Emperor for the cost of the repair. I believe that the Great West Emperor is wise and will never renege on the debt. At this moment, a powerful surge of spiritual energy rushed out from the East Emperor's body like a flame. This was just the most common fire elemental spell, not the vermilion bird divine ability, but it was already so terrifying. This was because the East Emperor didn't want to directly reveal his true identity, so he deliberately hid it. He was currently playing the role of a member of the royal family from the East Domain. Therefore, it wasn't strange for him to have a fire element spell on him. King Tianquan had already noticed that the guest in room 1 wasn't an ordinary person, but the intensity of this spirit power still made his eyes twitch slightly. The moment their auras collided, the scene immediately became irreconcilable. The ancient city guards in the sky couldn't withstand this collision of auras at all, and were extremely embarrassed to be caught in the middle. They had no choice but to descend from the sky and take charge of dispersing the crowd and building a barrier. Madame Shan Xiao, it's very dangerous here. An ancient city guard approached Madame Shan Xiao and tried to take her away. However, Madame Shan Xiao just smiled slightly. It's fine, I'm here. She then looked at Sun Fu, Chen Ren and Guo Jie next to her. These 3 juniors will also be under my protection. Nothing will happen to them. Drive away the other independent cultivators first, their safety is more important. Madame Shan Xiao's expression was unexpectedly calm and composed, and Lotus Sun, Zhang Zipei, and Wang Zhen were all a little dazed by her. They were certain that Madame Shan Xiao wasn't from the modern era, but her calm attitude, as if she already knew Wang Ling's identity, made them feel very puzzled. Boom! King Tianquan pressed his palm forward, and the sound of the great Tao instantly boomed. He moved extremely quickly like a flood dragon exploring the sea, and the blazing light it produced shattered the surrounding space. Dark purple lightning flashed in an incomparably terrifying manner. This was the Western region's Romance of the Dragon and Snake, divine power, which King Tianquan had already cultivated to the 10th level. His palm moved at a terrifying speed, like a snake, a dragon, and a flood dragon, twisting together in an earth-shattering manner. Together with the blazing light emitted by East Great Emperor, it formed a dazzling yin and yang pattern. One yin and one yang, one was like a demon god descending to the world, and the other was like a golden crow flying in the sky. Hiding in East Great Emperor's body, Wang Ling secretly observed everything. He hadn't directly assisted East Great Emperor in his attack, and everything he was seeing now was East Great Emperor's own strength. It could only be said that East Great Emperor was indeed an expert with the bearing of a great emperor. He just stood where he was with his hands behind his back, and was unusually steady. Just as the Great East Emperor had said before, he was only facing a duke. How could a mere duke make him, a great emperor, feel fear? So, standing where he was, he just wrapped his palm in fire, then clenched his fist and punched out at King Tianquan in front of him. Boom! A huge and blazing light burst forth from East Great Emperor's fist and shot straight at King Tianquan's body like a fire dragon. East Great Emperor's blow could be said to be unstoppable. After it exploded with astonishing power, it shot into the sky and formed an astonishing pillar of fire that the naked eye couldn't see. What happened next was completely out of everyone's expectations. Everyone, including the East Great Emperor himself, was astonished. Because East Great Emperor hadn't expected this at all. His punch, to actually directly kill King Tianquan. And this wasn't written in the diary at all. Chapter 1878. With just one punch, King Tianquan had been directly reduced to ashes. East Great Emperor was instantly stupefied. This wasn't what he wanted to see, because it wasn't part of the diary's plot at all. According to the diary's plot, he would have only severely injured King Tianquan, and wouldn't have been reduced to ashes like this. What's going on? Why did he just die? Wang Ying asked, but his expression was just as calm as Wang Ling's. Coincidentally, both of them felt that things were getting interesting. Wang Ling had initially thought that since this journey of eternity had been planned, there would definitely be some hiccups, and it wouldn't go as smoothly as the diary had planned. At first, he had thought that East Great Emperor was in cahoots with the person who had instructed him to write the diary, so he had hidden the truth and refused to reveal his identity. But looking at the current outcome, it was clear that East Great Emperor had no idea that the diary's plot had been changed, and was even a little stupefied. No, I didn't want to kill him at all. Senior Wang didn't help me. The strength of my punch just now shouldn't have been enough to kill him at all. In the party voice chat, the East Great Arch was also in disbelief. From the looks of it, it's very likely that we were all set up together, Lotus Sun added at this moment. According to the original diary's plot, King Tianquan had only been severely injured, and even West Great Emperor had only suffered a loss in silence. After all, this was a central region galaxy, a place with strict order. King Tianquan had directly used the method of killing and robbing, and then he had been severely injured by the East Great Arch. No matter where you looked at it, the East Great Arch was in the right. But now that King Tianquan was dead, it wasn't just an ordinary conflict, but a diplomatic issue between the two territories. The person who had died was King Tianquan, the most famous lord in the Western Territory. He was also the great general who guarded the Western Territory. He was the representative of West Great Emperor, and his overall strength was second only to West Great Emperor. But such a person had been killed with one punch. This was something that no one had expected. At that moment, the streets of the ancient city began to be filled with commotion. This was because King Heavenly Kun had suddenly disappeared under that punch. No one had realized that King Heavenly Kun had been killed. They felt that King Heavenly Kun had used some sort of method to escape. For a moment, many people were discussing. Only the East Great Sovereign side clearly knew that King Tianquan had died a thorough death. Not even his ashes were left behind. Just as they were at a loss as to what to do, the two serpent woman attendants who had been following King Tianquan suddenly walked over. The two snake women acted as if they were facing a great enemy. Snake woman number 1 stared at the Great East Emperor and said, You actually used such a despicable method. If it wasn't for my prince's quick escape, I'm afraid he would have been severely injured by your hands. East Great Emperor, seeing this, Snake Woman number 2 quickly echoed, Yeah, just you wait. Once my Wang Ye regains his strength, he will definitely find you for revenge. The two of them cursed loudly, as if they were afraid that the people around them wouldn't be able to hear them. It wasn't until then that the people around them understood the truth of the matter. Oh, it turned out that this King Heavenly Kun had slipped away. He even said that he was the representative of the Great West Emperor. He had started a fight, but in the end, he had run away. How cowardly! For a moment, many people on the street were talking about this. For a moment, the area around the temple became very chaotic. Helpless, everyone could only find a place to hold a meeting and then come up with a plan. The historical trajectory in the diary had now been disrupted. King Heavenly Kun's death was a key plot point, and no one knew what would happen next. As for those two snake women, who were singing the same tune as if they were performing a crosstalk, Wang Ling was basically convinced that these two snake women were on their side. Otherwise, they would never have instigated a war between King Heavenly King and the East Great Emperor. Another very important point was that they had actually helped the East Great Emperor to temporarily smooth things over. If it hadn't been for these two snake women, perhaps everyone would have known that something had happened to King Heavenly Kun. But both Wang Ling and the East Great Emperor were well aware that this was just a stopgap measure. After all, the fight had taken place in front of the temple and in front of the divine elephants of the other 3 great emperors. Sooner or later, the truth couldn't be wrapped up, and it was only a matter of time before it was discovered. Madame Shanxiu had mentioned Chunlan House earlier, so the East Great Emperor had immediately asked Zhang Zizi to steal money to reserve the entire building. The East Great Emperor, Wang Ling, Wang Ying, the Holy Girl of Holy Stone Sect, Wang Zhen, and the Jiaoyang Goddess, Lotus Sun, who had already changed her name to Xia Xinyan, sat in a private room. On the other side, Li Ren, Zhang Zizi, sat in another private room with the Wangu trio, Chen Ren, Guijie, Sun Fu, and Madame Shanxiu. As for Mei Yunhai, he had been used as a tool to guard the door of the restaurant. After waiting for a while, Wang Ling's powerful spiritual senses quickly picked up news of the 2 snake women under King Heavenly Kun. He had already informed Mei Yunhai, so when he saw the 2 snake women arrive, Mei Yunhai didn't stop them and directly let them in. After the 2 entered, they immediately headed for the East Great Emperor's house. The expressions on their faces were very nervous and perturbed, as if they had mustered up a lot of courage to come here. "Excuse me, you are..." One of the snake women opened her mouth and straightforwardly confirmed Wang Ling's identity. It was very obvious that these 2 snake women had received the secret signal that Wang Ling had sent out at the auction house by auctioning off that non-existent divine beast hair. But before snake woman number 1 could speak, Wang Ying immediately interjected, "That's right, I am Wang Ying." After saying this, the 2 snake women looked at each other. They were very quick-witted, and when they saw Wang Ying directly interject, they immediately understood that Wang Ling and Wang Ying were probably in the same body, and he was definitely still hiding his identity. Wang Ying had come forward because he didn't want to be exposed. "Sure enough, it's you, Senior Wang." After understanding everything, Snake Woman number 1 immediately sighed with emotion, and then revealed her identity. "I am Lu Qingyi." Because they had already completely broken away from history, there was no harm in directly revealing their identities without using the team telepathy spell. She then turned her gaze to Xia Xinyan with a gentle expression. "This should be my good disciple, Rongrong, right?" Hearing this, Lotus Sun immediately burst out laughing. Shifu, how did you know?" "In any case, I was your cheap Shifu. Your little eyes are too easy to read." Saying this, Lu Qingyi, who was playing Snake Woman number 1, turned her gaze to the Holy Stone Church Holy Girl. Just as everyone thought that Lu Qingyi would guess Wang Zhen's identity, to everyone's surprise, Lu Qingyi directly raised her hand and slapped him. "Paw!" There was a crisp sound, and Wang Zhen was a little dazed. "What are you doing?" With tears in her eyes, Lu Qingyi instantly went over and hugged him. "Idiot! Do you know how worried I was about you?" Wang Zhen was dazed, and just as he was about to hug Lu Qingyi, blood started to ooze from the corner of his mouth. Lu Qingyi was startled. "What's going on?" "I just lightly slapped him." East Great Emperor swallowed the dog food in his mouth, then wiped the sweat off his cheeks. "This brother Wang Zhen, the body he's attached to is already pregnant. Miss Lu's palm strike just now should have affected his fetus." Lu Qingyi. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.